I closed my eyes and pressed my back against the bench as I strained to push the barbell up away from my chest. With a muffled groan, I succeeded. "Good, Tommy boy." A harsh feminine voice pierced my concentration. "Again. Give me another one." I opened my eyes and beheld a stunning golden goddess. She didn't quite make Amazon status since she was a couple inches shorter than 6 feet, and although very muscular, she wasn't muscle-bound. So how did I come to be looking up the shorts of this walking dream? Why, by paying $40 an hour, of course. Angie was my private personal trainer at Main Street Fitness. Well, at least she was mine 3 times a week from 4 to 5. "Come on, Tommy boy," she barked. "Give me one more. Push. Harder, harder." She certainly had the ability to motivate and inspire. With a grunt, I pressed the barbell high above my chest again. My motivations were simple. Sex? More accurately, it was sex, love, and happiness. But sex was the primary motivation at that time. Like most divorced men, I'd once again gone back to the gym to try and make myself more desirable to the female of my species. Without question, I'd let myself go these past 6 years. While I was never in bodybuilder shape, even in college, the lack of exercise over the years had taken its toll, especially in the 15 months since my divorce. In the year 2012, we seemed to be the perfect couple, the football player and the cheerleader. Well, that's not completely accurate. Leah wasn't exactly a cheerleader. She was a part of the dance team. I fell for her pretty face immediately. Her long brown hair flowed in ringlets all the way down to her waist, and while she was moderately well endowed, her perfect body was the thing that drew my attention initially. Myself? Although I was a football player, I certainly wasn't the star quarterback heartthrob. I'd been the starting left guard for the St. Catherine College Crusaders, a successful, small college football team. My 280-pound playing weight fit my 6 feet 3 inches frame well enough. I certainly didn't have a six-pack, but my arms and legs were rock solid. In the years since, muscles that were created to crush opponents had softened into flab, and my weight had skyrocketed. That tends to happen when instead of spending hours in the gym, you spend hours behind a computer screen. My name is officially Thomas Patrick Swanson, but everyone calls me Tommy Boy. I guess there are some similarities. From the round face to the stock of unruly dirty blonde hair. I've been told several times I resembled Chris Farley. I tried to grow a beard to separate myself from that image, but all I'd accomplished was looking like an Amish farmer. Of course, since I didn't like the way it looked, my wife loved it. So, like most husbands, I kept it. Leah and I married shortly after we graduated. I was able to get an entry-level position with Silent Network Solutions, SNS, and Leah was promoted to assistant manager at the Macy's department store in the Lakewood Mall. SNS was a local company that installed, monitored, and maintained networks for other businesses. One of their biggest contracts was with St. Catherine's College, and that's where I'd interned with them. It was owned by Maria Grym and her silent partner Ryan Thorpe. Ryan was a venture capitalist in his late 30s, but had the Thorpe money to back him. Maria was a petite, quiet woman who was in her mid-50s but looked much older. Still, she was damn intelligent. She'd been a part of Grym Engineering before the two Grym brothers parted ways several years earlier amidst a nasty scandal. Her ex-husband, Victor, his brother, Roland, and Maria were at the center of countless rumors. Whatever happened was never made public, but ended with Victor and Maria leaving the company and Victor never speaking to his brother again. Maria and Victor divorced soon after, as well. After all the dust settled, Maria got together with Ryan and formed SNS. With Ryan's money and connections and Maria's intelligence, SNS quickly took off and has been doing very well. It's where I've called home for the past 5 years. Looking back, I thought Leah and I had a good marriage those first 3 years. The last 2 years were rough, with the last 6 months being downright hell. We seemed to fight about almost everything, and it was obvious she wasn't happy. I won't lay all of the blame at Susie's feet, but she certainly was a big part of Leah's unhappiness. Susie was Leah's best friend from college, and to put it bluntly, she was a witch, a very beautiful, very sexy one. But still a witch. She was on the same level as the JCPs found in Brownwood. Those Johnson County princesses are local legends and are basically gorgeous little elves with attractive body. Susie, however, was that petite auburn-haired, sexy co-ed who was the dream of most college guys and countless older men. And yes, she was a cheerleader. I can call her a witch because the facts don't lie. Susie had been with at least a dozen of my ex-teammates at one time or another since I'd known her, and several of them at the same time. I'll have to admit I'd hooked up with her a few times myself. Hell, she really was hot enough to be a playmate. However, everything between Susie and I happened a year before I started dating Leah. Now, I don't believe the once a witch, always a witch adage, but Susie had never shown any desire to change. At that time, she had 3 broken marriages, and that was only in the previous 2 years. The first divorce was hers, and in the other 2, she was the other woman. While I wasn't excited about her hanging around my wife, they'd been best friends before we were married and still worked together at Macy's. Keeping them apart would have been next to impossible. Besides, I really didn't have much of a problem with Susie until after her divorce. Leah and I had been married about 2.5 years when Susie caught her newlywed husband cheating, which started a nasty divorce which left Susie broken and very bitter. Susie changed during the divorce, and not for the better. Now, all men were pigs in her eyes. What's worse than having a witch as your wife's best friend? Having a man-hating, bitter, vindictive witch as her BFF. Leah spent a lot of time going over to her house and consoling her. Soon, my wife informed me she needed to get Susie back out into the world, and they started their girls' night out on a weekly basis. It wasn't a big deal, and Leah and I set up some basic ground rules to avoid any problems. There was to be no slow dancing with other men, and she wouldn't let any guy kiss her or allow his hands to touch her inappropriately. She was also going to guard against flirting too much. Most importantly, she agreed to never be alone with a man. Some would say I was stupid for agreeing to a girls' night out, but let's be real. I sure as hell wasn't going to keep my wife under lock and key. I'd seen too many couples break up because distrust had poisoned their relationship until it had become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Besides, at the time I still trusted her, and she'd never given me a reason to doubt her. The nights with Susie started off being on Tuesdays, but ended up being every Saturday night. I hate to admit it, but my job helped it come about. You see, working with networks whenever we do updates or changes for our customers are typically done over the weekend or late at night so as not to interrupt daily business. That meant I worked nights, Saturdays, and Sundays frequently. It was when their nights out changed to Saturday that things turned from bad to worse. The switch in days came about 6 months before my marriage crashed, and Leah and I were already starting to argue all the time. It seemed I couldn't do anything right in her eyes. I don't know when I became the enemy, but I had a pretty good idea of who planted that thought in her head. By then, my wife's relationship with Susie had become a constant source of most of our arguments. I didn't like the influence Susie was having on Leah, and I was very vocal about it. Since I threatened her friendship with Leah, I soon became Susie's #1 enemy. I wish I could say I hadn't been such an easy target, but things at work and home joined together to make it that way. I'd recently been promoted to network administrator for several of our smaller clients, and was working extra hours trying to get a handle on the job. Being on call all the time made things even worse. Personally, I'd also added about 20 extra pounds by then, and Leah wasn't happy about it. She'd added a little extra weight herself. It might have bothered some guys, but I still thought she was sexy as hell. I won't tell you my failed marriage was entirely my wife's fault. It took both of us to let the marriage get that weak. I will say, though, when it got rough, only one of us seemed to fight for it. Leah retreated more and more into her friendship with Susie as our communication kept breaking down. During those last 2 years, I begged, pleaded, yelled, and threatened. I even suggested counseling several times, but it always seemed to fall on deaf ears. Initially, I'd started trying to lose the weight, but it seemed like my wife was already giving up on me, so I quit trying. With my anger, frustration, and depression, I needed an escape, so I ate junk food and drank more beer. Like I said, it takes 2 to tango, and we were caught in a nasty cycle. Even though I knew my marriage was in trouble, the way it ended still caught me off guard. I'd known Leah had been unhappy, but at times during those last couple of months, she'd been in a much better mood. Maybe I was stupid, or maybe I was simply afraid of what I might find if I started asking too many questions. I didn't think Leah was cheating on me yet, but I knew things were headed there if there weren't changes. What I was really afraid of was that Leah might choose her friendship with Susie over me, and that would have killed our marriage. I found out I was too late. I'd come home early Saturday evening and found Leah and Susie sitting in the living room of our apartment having a drink. Yeah, we were still living in an apartment. We decided when we got married to save up for a house those first several years. We now lived in one of the nicer apartment complexes in Brownwood, the Shadowdale Apartments. Unfortunately, even though we'd had enough money for a nice down payment a year ago, any thoughts about buying a home had faded with our marital problems. Now that dream was crumbling. It was obvious the pair was getting ready to go out, since both of them were dressed to kill. I figured they'd planned to go to either the City Lights or the Strobe, Brownwood's primary 2 nightclubs. Susie had always been a knockout with the morals of a witch in heat, but it had been years since I had seen my wife dressed up like that for anyone else but me. She wore clothes that were never past the husband test. When I walked in on them, they were laughing and talking. They abruptly stopped when they saw me. Leah looked at me and smiled while I noticed the look on Susie's face was closer to a smirk. "Honey, you're home early," Leah said cheerfully. "Yeah, we finished the network configuration early and I left Jonas and Armand to finish the testing. They'll give me a call if there are any problems." We sat there in an awkward silence for a few moments before I broke the ice. "It appears you two are going out?" I asked flatly. "Well," Susie snorted. "What was your first clue?" "The fact you both look like you're dressed for sex. It looks like both of you are advertising and all that's missing is a pimp." Leah's smile disappeared. "A-hole," Susie sneered. 304, I replied, faking a sweet smile. "Tommy, we're just going to the city lights and let off a little steam. As long as you're still doing what you promised," I said coldly. "You swore to me you'd make sure your actions would always pass the husband test." "Depends on the husband," Susie snorted, and Leah shot her an icy glare. I knew then my marriage was in far worse trouble than I'd imagined. Obviously, things had gone too far. However, I was still hoping we could find a way to get through this. Naive, I guess, but I still loved her and was praying my marriage could somehow survive. I looked between my wife and Susie several times as an ugly thought began to creep into my mind. I guess Susie could read my expression and barked out her little fake laugh. "Relax, Stud McMuffin. Just because I like to dine at the Y on occasion doesn't mean your wife does. Besides," her smile turned evil, "I can verify she's heterosexual through and through. Very heterosexual, if you know what I mean." "Damn it, Susie," Leah hissed. "Just shut the hell up." I was stunned as I processed the implications of what I'd heard. I could feel my heart beginning to break. "What?" Susie mocked. "Still haven't figured it out? Fat, drunk and stupid is no way to go through life, son. Careful," which, I growled, "or I'll throw your butt out on the street. Of course, you'll be right at home and probably pick up a few tricks." "Screw you. Never again. My wife is my only lover now." "Too bad she can't say the same. Fat butt?" Leah gasped as I stared daggers at the both of them. I felt a familiar cold rage begin building in my stomach. "My God, Susie," Leah whispered. "What the hell are you doing?" "Shit, girl," the witch laughed evilly. "It's time to dump the Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man over there. Hell, you said Rob and Marcus were both better lovers than he could ever hope to be." "Susie, stop," Leah pleaded. "You don't know what you're doing. Everyone deals with pain differently. Some run, others break down and cry, while still others strike out. I'd been trained to allow it to feed my internal rage. It had been years since I'd experienced it, but I could feel it crawling all over me as my face began to flush. It wasn't some exotic martial arts or special military kind of training that would turn me into a cold-blooded killer. It was something much less exaggerated, idolized, or even feared. It was a cold, soulless anger that had been carefully cultivated by a college football program which needed quick, thinking animals for players. "Oh, please," Susie said, laughing. "It's not like Hill. I've always surprised people with how quick I am. I am certainly not fast, but I do have very good reflexes and an exceptional first few steps. Even with the extra weight, I made the 2 strides which brought me over to Susie before she could even react. The sound of my fist shattering the sheetrock wall inches beside Susie's face caused both women to scream in surprise. I'd figured I'd bruised a couple of knuckles, maybe even broke one, but it wouldn't have been the first time. Ignoring the discomfort in my hand, I leaned down and growled, "Now, you witch." Apparently, she saw something in my eyes that assured her she was in real danger. She screamed in terror and curled up in a fetal position, covering her face. "Oh God, stay away from me," she cried out hysterically. I put both hands on either side of her and leaned in even closer. My face was inches away from hers, and I am sure she could feel the heat of my breath on her arms. "Listen, 304, I hissed in a low voice so only she could hear clearly. "One more word out of your mouth and I'll disfigure that face of yours. I'll make it match that hideous soul you claim to have. You can count on the fact no amount of money will ever be able to make you beautiful again. Look me in the eye, witch." She stared up at me with one eye from between her arms. It was the size of a silver dollar, and the tears had already begun to trickle down her face. "Make no mistake, I'll do the time knowing the only way you'll ever get screwed again is with a bag over your head. You understand me, witch?" Her face was frozen in fear like in a bad horror flick. However, her answer was evident and announced itself with the acrid smell of her urine. I stood up and looked over at my soon-to-be ex-wife. Her eyes were as huge as Susie's. "Is it true?" I barked. "Have you already cheated on me?" The look on her face confirmed Susie's accusations. I felt my heart finally break as I realized my marriage was over. I'd held onto a slim hope, but knowing she'd been sleeping with other guys signed its death notice. Leah stared silently at me and cried, "Tommy, I didn't want you to find out this way. Our marriage hasn't been good for a long time, and we've both been so unhappy. So this is how you chose to fix it? By having sex with other guys? Damn, even you can't be that stupid. It couldn't be fixed," she screamed back at me. "How the hell would you know?" I yelled back, "Did you even try? What have you done to even try to save our marriage?" "I'm sorry, Tommy, but our marriage has been over for a while." "Really, for a while? It sure would have been nice if you would have told me so I wouldn't have wasted my time fighting for it. So why didn't you just divorce me so I could have started living like you were, like I was single?" "I am sorry," she cried. "Bullshit. Oh? You may be sorry your secret is out, but you sure as hell aren't sorry for hurting me. If you were, you would have ended our marriage instead of stabbing me in the back by cheating on me." We stared silently at each other for several uncomfortable seconds. I guess we were both searching for something to say, but there wasn't anything left to say. I finally broke the stalemate. "Get out," I sneered. "Go stay with one of your boyfriends, or even with this 304 for a few days. I'll get my shit moved out tomorrow, and then you can either stay here or move in with one of your sex buddies. No matter what, on Monday, I'll either break the lease or make sure my name is no longer on it. I'll pay for the damage to the wall as well." "Tommy," she whimpered. I felt my rage begin to ebb. In its place was a dark weariness, a premonition of days to come. "Just get out, Leah," I growled. "Unless there's some other way you'd like to hurt me?" "I am sorry," she whispered as she and Susie quickly left. Moments later, the apartment was filled with an eerie silence and the nasty smell of piss. I thought it was ironically appropriate, since the whole scene mimicked my now-dead marriage. Leah came and got her things and moved in with Susie. I found out it was going to cost too much to break the lease, so I ended up moving into a different apartment in the same complex for some extra fees. At first, I was going to get the nastiest, most vicious divorce attorney I could afford and try to make Leah's life as miserable as mine was. However, as I considered my options, I recognized I had very little to work with. There weren't a lot of ways to legally hurt her. We'd only been married 5 years and had no children and no property. I couldn't really smear her reputation since our friends and the people she worked with either already knew or would soon know she was a witch. It might have been different if she still loved me or wanted to try and salvage the marriage, but she didn't. She'd already moved on. All that was really left was to launch a long and costly legal battle in hopes of harassing her. Should I have gone for blood? Maybe. To be honest, I'm not sure now, and I certainly wasn't sure back then. In the end, I didn't. My boss helped focus me. Maria asked me what I wanted. To get on with my life as quickly as possible, or revenge. She told me if I was going for blood, I needed to do so with my eyes wide open, and the nastier the divorce, the more bitter and angry I would likely become. There was some unspoken correlation between the amount of revenge and the time needed to heal from all this mess. When I told her I really didn't know, she set me up with Delphina Featherstone, a good divorce attorney with Rossi and Associates. She was tough, but not vicious. The divorce went through as smoothly as one would expect with it not being contested. The few times Leah and I met face-to-face were painful and surprisingly, not only just for me. Leah looked guilty and lost through most of those meetings, stating frequently that she only wanted to get it over with. In the end, I gave her most of our savings in lieu of an extended alimony, so we wouldn't need to have any more contact than was necessary. Several months after filing, we were divorced and my dreams of growing old with Leah were dead. Even though we had very little contact during the divorce, Brownwood isn't that big a city, so I saw her on occasion. Those times we ran into each other, we made sure not to talk, and usually one of us would leave after a short time. After the divorce, I saw her at the city lights in the company of Rob Sutherland, a shift supervisor from the battery plant. I figured that was the Rob Susie had referred to months earlier. It would mean the Marcus was probably Marcus Dixon. It made sense since I'd seen and talked to both of them several times over the years. Sutherland was a local hero, since he was Joe All-American at Brownwood High School several years back. Unfortunately, high school was over, but I'm not sure this guy knew it. He still had his good looks and seemed to be in decent shape. He also seemed arrogant and thought himself a ladies' man. Dixon was a more grown-up version of Sutherland in most ways. He'd played defensive end down at State U before ending up in Brownwood a decade ago, but was still in great shape. He was a big guy who was as arrogant as Sutherland, but had the ripped physique to back it up. Rumor had it he thought of himself as the answer to every woman's fantasy. I initially considered paying each of them a visit, but by then it wasn't worth it. First, I didn't have proof, and trying to verify every guy my witch of a wife had slept with could have been a monumental task if she was following in Susie's footsteps. She'd wounded my pride when she'd willingly cheated on me, but she was the one who'd given up on our marriage. Whether she'd slept with those two, or dozens like them, chasing down every guy she cheated on me with would have been a waste of time. If I was being totally honest, at the time I probably could have taken Sutherland in a fair fight, but certainly not Dixon. Marcus Dixon would have kicked my butt. To win that fight, I would have had to jump him from behind or use some kind of equalizer. It could have resulted in a little jail time. Any jail time would certainly cost me my job. No, Leah sure as hell wasn't worth it. After my epiphany at the city lights, I didn't go out much. My life consisted mainly of work, sleep, work, overeat and be depressed, then back to work. Not surprisingly, I ballooned from 305 pounds to over 345. Spring year 2014. After about a year of wallowing in my self-pity, I finally pulled my head out of my butt and began to rebuild my life. I took a long, hard look at myself and didn't like what I saw. I got rid of the bad beard, began eating better, and joined a gym. Of course, it was kind of hit or miss with the workouts and fast foods were still on my daily menu. It was obvious I was going to need some help dropping the weight. That had led me to Angie Miles, the owner of MS Fit, Main Street Fitness. She'd set me up with a dietitian and an exercise regimen. Since Angie was a magnet for most males' attention, it didn't take long to find out the basic information about her. It was well known she'd been a stripper besides a fitness Nazi. She was referred to by most people around Brownwood as the Miss Fit, but behind her back, most guys at the gym called her Miss TOS. I did say that the first thing you noticed about Angie was her very large tatas, didn't I? Besides her appearance, she was a divorcee in her late 20s with a 4-year-old daughter. She'd started MS Fit with her husband, Eric, who was some Adonis-like bodybuilder. He ended up running off with the widowed trophy wife of a Brownwood blue blood. He left Angie the gym, a newly purchased home, and not much else. Anyone who'd been around Angie knew she was a very unique, borderline bipolar type of individual. It was immediately obvious she was passionate, if not obsessive, with her pursuit for fitness. Around other women she was very intense, but still warm and supportive. With men, she was very Jekyll and Hyde. She flirted and teased when in a group of guys, but put a wall up when there was only 1 or 2 guys. I didn't doubt it was because of the divorce and the fact she was probably hit on a dozen times every day. When it came to the gym and fitness, she was all business and completely professional. Having Angie as a trainer was like having a stripper for a drill instructor. It was certainly very different from my coaches back in college. It was this dangerous vision of loveliness with fangs. It didn't take her but a second to deflate the situation. Really, Tommy boy? What the hell am I going to have to wear? A parka? If you spent half as much effort watching what you eat as you do staring at my body, you'd have lost more than 5 pounds these past few weeks. I knew she was right. Well, partially right. We'd been working together for the past several weeks, and I was still finding it difficult not to stare at her. Unfortunately, we hadn't gotten the results Angie or I had wanted. Of course, when I confessed to her I'd been making midnight runs through the McDonald's drive-thru, I thought she was going to take my head off. "Damn it, Tommy boy," she barked, getting ready to lecture me. "And you're wrong, Angie," I said, interrupting. She stood with her hands on her hips, trying to bore a hole in my forehead with her glare. "Angie, you're right about my lack of dedication, but you're wrong about me staring at your enormous body. I am struggling not to stare at your beautiful face and your incredible body." She stood frozen for a moment. I wasn't sure if she was going to laugh, slap me, or simply kick me in the nuts. Thankfully, I noticed the edges of her mouth fighting to curl upwards. "Well, we're done for today. Look, Tommy boy, we've got to find something that'll motivate you to really lose the weight. I want you to come up with a suggestion by the time we meet again." "Okay." I nodded. "Okay, I'll see you Friday," she said as she turned away and bent over to gather her things. She froze abruptly, then began to speak very slowly. "Tommy boy." "Yeah," I said, sheepishly giving up any intentions of not staring. "Stop. Sorry, Angie, but I am divorced, not dead." She stood up and put her bag over her shoulder. "Well then, don't make it so obvious. You're drooling." "All right," I said, grinning. "I'll try to do better." "Good," she said, trying to sound gruff. As she walked away, I did notice her trying to hide a tiny smirk. Over the next couple nights I did think about it. Well, to be more honest, I thought about Angie in various stages to be exact. I alternated between hot and cold showers. When we met for my session, she focused on the workout. After busting my butt for most of the hour, she finally followed up on my assignment. Well, what? I stammered, since I was out of breath. Have you figured out what would motivate you enough to lose the weight? I stared at her longer than I meant to as I caught my breath. Maybe, I said as I felt a smile start to spread across my face. It took a second to figure out what I was thinking. When she did, she crossed her arms trying to give off that disgusted look girls seem to be ingrained with. My smile spread until my face began to hurt. Really, Tommy boy? I mean, really? Sorry, Angie, but you asked. The look on her face morphed into something I couldn't read at first. Then I recognized it as hurt. Do you think I am a 304, Tommy boy? She said it calmly, but I could see the disappointment in her face. No. I knew I was standing at the edge of the abyss. I figured I could play this off as a joke, act like I was only teasing and take her harsh rebuff. That would be the easiest and safest action, but it wouldn't deal with the disappointment I could see growing in her eyes. To counter it, I'd need to explain myself, and that would be dangerous. It would require exposing my inner thoughts to her. Shit, I thought. The abyss is calling. No, Angie, I said softly. What I see is an unbelievably attractive woman that someone like me could never hope to get close to without some kind of incentive. That incentive could be money or a favor, but it could also be out of guilt or some act of mercy. Whatever the source, there has to be a reason a woman so far out of my league, like you, would spend time with someone like me. Angie started to say something, but I cut her off. No, you wanted to know, so let me finish. As I pulled my thoughts together, I noticed the look on her face had changed. Gone was the disappointed hurt, and in its place was a softer, questioning look. I decided then to jump off into the abyss. Geronimo. If I was still married and my wife would have asked me that question, I would have told her, sex. I would have asked her for different sexual favor for each targeted weight. Maybe a full makeout session at 10 pounds, a surprise BJ at 20, a sensual strip tease at 30, and it goes on. Angie stared silently. I thought maybe I'd stunned her, so I continued. That's what I would have suggested to my wife had she not decided to give her body away freely to other guys. So would I alter that request if I was to ask you? Of course. Instead of those rewards, I'd replace them with sensual massages, long hot showers together. However, the ultimate reward would still be spending the night in your bed with you. Angie, I am not completely stupid. I know the ogre never ends up with the beautiful princess unless it's a fairy tale or a Disney movie. However, you asked me to identify the most powerful thing that could motivate me, and the answer is you. When I was finished, I sat there and prepared for her response. I wasn't sure whether she would fillet me with her words or physically beat the shit out of me. What I prayed for was she wouldn't laugh and make me feel more foolish than I already did. She was quiet for several seconds before she gave a small snort and smile. Well, that's got to be one of the most unusual pickup lines I've ever received. She started gathering her things again, but making sure to face me. You might be onto something, though. I'll need to think on it for a while. And no, you're not going to get anything if you drop a certain amount of weight. And it'll be a cold day in hell before I ever sleep with you. Just so you'll get off your butt and lose the weight. Even though she barked out the last part of her response, there was still a small smile on her face. By the way, she said with questioning stare, why stop at 80 pounds? That would put me at 260 pounds. That's 20 pounds lower than my playing weight 7 years ago when I was in good shape. I am not sure I'll ever be able to make it to 250. Uh-huh, she said, staring me in the eyes. All right, let me play around with these ideas for a bit. I smiled. Not that way, you perv. She snorted a laugh. Men, she huffed as she walked away. Do they ever think of anything else? I was pretty sure that was a rhetorical question, so I stood silently and grinned. Angie didn't mention our conversation for a couple of weeks, and I didn't press the issue. I figured maybe she'd thought about it more and decided it was a bad idea. Needless to say, I was surprised when she told me she had a proposal and we needed to talk after my workout. Listen, Tommy boy, even though your idea seemed like some fantasy, it had some good points to it. What I'd propose is something more like this. Reaching the ultimate goal would entitle you to taking me out on a very elegant, very expensive date. If we're looking at 80 pounds, then let's target 8 months. Damn, that's aggressive, I replied. Yes, but not as bad as it sounds since you're starting off with a good 20 or 30 pounds that can be taken care of by simply changing your diet. You can count on McDonald's not being on it. I groaned. Besides, she continued, when you make weight, it'll be in time for the Christmas ball at the Hawthorne Hotel. She paused, waiting on me to catch up with her reasoning. The Christmas ball was the most formal gala event in Brownwood. It was a black tie affair, which was both expensive and extravagant. I would need a tux, and Angie, damn there it was, and Angie would need a formal evening dress. She would go all out to be the belle of the ball, and I'd be her escort. I looked at Angie and saw a sparkle in her eyes. She smiled warmly when she realized I'd finally figured it out. I would be going to the ball with one of the hottest women in Brownwood. All right, I said calmly. Taking a beautiful woman to the ball is pretty good motivation. Not as good as sex, but pretty damn good. You wish, she said, laughing. Now, in order for this to happen, we need to set sub-goals. I take it you're not a ballroom dancer? I used to dance a bit, but no, I can't waltz worth a damn. Well then, the first level is to start dance lessons. They have lessons at the Hawthorne Hotel on Wednesdays. We'll start those when you reach 30 pounds. 30? I yelped. What happened to 20? You can reach 20 simply by putting down the Big Macs and McRibs. I want to see you work for it, Tommy boy. If you're going to be stepping on my toes, I want it to be worth it. She stepped next to me so close I could feel the heat of her breath. Besides, she whispered so no one else could accidentally overhear, I think an extra 10 pounds might be worth getting to hold me, even if it's only while we learn to dance together. Of course, she said, grinning evilly as she leaned back. All right, I sighed. You win. At 30, we start dance lessons. Next? At 60 pounds, she said calmly, you need to take me out for dinner. Really? I said, perking up. Relax, lover boy, she said, smirking. It's just a date, nothing else, so we'll be more comfortable around each other during the Christmas ball. I admit I had a difficult time removing the smile on my face as I thought about taking Angie Miles out on a date. Angie smirked as she watched my reaction. Tommy boy, she said sternly, remember, no sex? And one more thing, I reserve the right to alter this agreement. That took the smile off my face, much to her surprise. That's fine, Angie, I said flatly, as long as you don't jerk me around like some fool. I don't care how damn beautiful you are, I won't put up with that shit. My witch of an ex-wife did that to me, and I won't go through that again. Understand? She studied me intently before nodding. Okay, I understand. After our talk, I found myself really starting to get serious about losing the weight. Angie's little motivation was working better than even I'd believed it would when I first suggested it. I expected it would help motivate me for a little while, but it was only going to be a jumpstart. Instead, now I was thinking about holding a particular gorgeous woman in my arms and started seriously watching what I ate. It didn't take long for the regulars at the gym to notice and start asking questions. When I was first approached, I gave some basic song and dance about wanting to date again. However, one of my lifting buddies, Brandon Kerr, could tell there was something more to it. Brandon was a nice-looking, well-built guy in his mid-20s, and when he wasn't working at City Hall, seemed to live at the gym. He was nice enough to spot me when I started lifting again, and we'd worked out together since. He'd quickly become a good friend. The thing about Brandon you noticed immediately was that besides his friendly personality and the fact he fancied himself a player, is that the dude never shuts up. So, who is she? Brandon asked while I was struggling with a squat. What? I grunted. I said, who is she? He said, smiling like a Cheshire cat. Man, I don't know what you're talking about. Cut the bullshit, Tommy boy. Ain't no dude ever hit the weights like that unless he's in training or chasing girls, and brother, you ain't in training. I laughed. Hey, how do you know? I heard they were holding auditions for Chippendale dancers at the Candy Cane. Oh, hell no. He snorted. Now I'll have to purge that mental picture. Unfortunately, Brandon was like a pit bull when he got an idea in his head. Besides that, the son of a witch was smart. Very smart. It didn't take him long to figure out who the she was. Holy shit. It's Miss TOS, isn't it? He said, and burst out laughing. Damn, you sure aren't dreaming small, are you? Hey, it's not like that. Sure, it isn't, he said sarcastically. No guy would ever fantasize about her. No, it's not like that. She's just helping me lose the weight. I knew I shouldn't have said anything, but now I was trapped. I explained if I lost the weight and learned to dance, Angie had agreed to let me take her to the Christmas ball. I was very clear there were no sexual connotations attached. Like a fool, I'd hoped Brandon had listened. Soon, I had guys at the gym coming up to me and congratulating me. I quickly tried to do damage control by setting them straight and informing them there wasn't anything sexual involved. Most believed me, others didn't. I knew it was only a matter of time before Angie heard some of the rumors. I wasn't sure how to approach her about it. I didn't get the chance. Damn it, Tommy boy. I turned and faced a sexy, beautiful, and very pissed off Angie Miles. She was almost running up to me. Unfortunately, the vision was marred by the fangs she was bearing and the smoke coming out of her ears. What the hell have you been telling people? She yelled. not caring about the attention she was drawing. I told you before, but maybe you weren't listening. I am not sleeping with you. There were more than a few laughs from our audience. I started to say something, but she continued on with her tirade. Can't you understand English? Or maybe you were too busy getting pats on the back from your bromance buddies for finding a way to get in bed with Miss Toes. In case we're not clear, let me help. It'll be a cold day in hell before I'd ever sleep with you, just to get you to lose weight. I am not some damn 304 to be screwed as some kind of reward for getting off your fat butt. Angie, I said, fighting to stay calm. Tommy boy, I want you to pack up your shit and leave. I'll refund your membership, but I want you out of my gym. I won't put up with someone spreading lies about me in my own place. Angie, I never told anyone that, I said, trying not to get pissed. All I said was you'd agreed to let me escort you to the Christmas ball if I lost the weight. Well then, somebody has been making up shit. And how the hell would anyone even know about the Christmas ball? Damn it, I should have known better than to trust you. She turned around and stormed back into her office. I looked over at Brandon, but he couldn't meet my eyes. This because of you, a-hole. I growled. Shit, Tommy boy. So I added a little to the story. How was I to know she'd go batshit crazy? Fix it, I snarled. Or you and I are going to have a serious problem. Understand? Yeah, dude, he said, nodding. I packed up my things as everyone around us watched. I shook my head in disgust as I left Main Street Fitness. By the time I got to my apartment, I'd already walked through her ambush in my mind several times. The more I thought about it, the madder I got. Her phone call several hours later caught me a little off guard. Humiliation is a good motivator for a decent person to turn ugly. Hello? I answered coldly. My voice must have given her pause because she didn't say anything. I gave her a couple of seconds, then hung up. A few minutes later, she called back. Yeah, I said, my disgust still evident. Tommy boy, I am sorry, she said in a strong but wavering voice. Yeah, me too, Ms. Miles. I should never have trusted a diva which not to publicly humiliate me. That'll teach me for letting my guard down. I knew my words had struck home when I heard silence. Finally, she spoke in a soft voice. I know I deserve that, but it still hurts. At least it wasn't said in front of an audience. No, it wasn't, she said quietly. There was an awkward silence for the next few seconds before I heard her take a deep breath. Tommy boy, I need to talk to you but face to face. Well, I'd invite you over, but it might start rumors. No, that wouldn't be a good idea, she continued, ignoring my barbed comment. Maybe we could meet somewhere? I took a deep breath and calmed myself. Hell, it wasn't the first time I'd been humiliated by some hot chick in front of people. Of course it had been back in college, usually in a bar, while I was drunk. I needed to face facts. In the grand scheme of things, this didn't mean shit. All right, I said, trying not to sound too irritated. Maybe we can meet for coffee at Starbucks? I still need to feed Erica supper. All right, McDonald's? She snorted. Erica will be thrilled. No fries, right? It was my turn to be silent. Several things came to mind, but all of them were either hateful or bitter. Tommy boy, I said some real shitty things earlier and acted like a real witch. I am sorry, and I'd like to apologize in person. Whether you still want me as your trainer or not, I hope you'll continue on with your diet and workouts. I'd hate for my actions to ruin that. Kind of hard to do when I've been kicked out of your gym. I heard her sigh. I am so very sorry for that. I said those things while I was in diva witch mode. I certainly wish I could take it back. I'd like you to still consider MS Fit as your gym. I was quiet for a moment. Please, Tommy boy, she whispered. Okay, Angie, no fries. Then meet us at the one near the gym in 20 minutes? I agreed and hung up, not sure what to expect. I knew I'd have to guard against saying anything cruel because she'd have her little girl there. Of course, that might have been Angie's plan all along. As I got my things to leave, I decided to let her have her say. I try not to act like a shit. Mom would be so proud. Her little boy can be taught. By the time I arrived, Angie and Erica were already there. Angie had ordered Erica a Happy Meal with apple slices, but Erica had somehow talked her mother into getting a small order of fries as well. Erica quickly found us a table. Of course, she picked one of those tables with the chairs fixed to it. You know, the ones that swivel and only children or thin people can use. Yeah, I am sure some skinny dumb shit thought that one up. Anyway, Angie found us a table where real people could sit, and Erica quickly divvied up our meal. Angie and I's portions consisted of only drinks, while Erica's Happy Meal was quickly laid out and organized. Like mama, like daughter. I suppressed a chuckle. Once her cub was taken care of, Angie sat back and relaxed somewhat. She looked at Erica for a long time before she turned her gaze on me. "Thank you," she said softly, peering at me with her light blue eyes. "Tommy boy, I want to tell you I am so sorry for some of the things I said back in the gym. I overreacted and lashed out at a nice guy who didn't deserve it." "Well, you're right, I didn't deserve it," I said coldly. "I told you I wasn't going to play the fool for anyone again." I turned and saw Erica's wide eyes staring at me. Damn, I scolded myself. I need to turn the hostility down a few notches. "Hey, Goldilocks," I said calmly. "Want to share those fries?" She slowly pulled her fries towards her before a small smile began to form. "No, Mr. Bear," she said quietly. "These are just right." Then she began to giggle and was soon laughing and in her own little world again. It's amazing how a child's laughter can sometimes diffuse even the tensest of situations. "I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to make you look like a fool," Angie said softly. "When one of the women at the gym informed me about the rumor, I lost my cool. This is a very touchy subject for me right now. When Brandon came to me and confessed he'd been the one to embellish and spread the story, I realized how badly I'd overreacted. Tommy boy, I'd like you to stay at the gym if you can find a way to forgive me." I sighed deeply. A beautiful woman asking forgiveness because she overreacted to being referred to as a prize? That was somewhat understandable. It was her attack-first attitude which concerned me. However, once was forgivable. Twice, I'd need to have my head examined. "And Brandon?" I asked. "Well, he's on a very short leash, but at least he had the balls to come to me and apologize." I decided not to tell her about my threat. "All right, Angie," I said calmly. "Apology accepted. However, some of the things you said were accurate." She looked at me with a questioning face. "Listen, I won't tell you those rumors haven't changed the way both the men and women at your gym look at me. Mostly it's for the better. I can promise you whenever I hear it, I tell them although I wish you were my prize if I meet my goal, that was not the deal. I made it very clear you weren't offering any part of your body as a reward. I can tell you they believed me since their looks toward me turned from envy to pity almost every time." "Thank you," she said, visibly relaxing. "I needed to hear that more than you realize." "I understand, Angie," I said softly. "Remember, I told you I understood the ogre never ends up with the princess?" "Damn it, Tommy boy, I don't want to hear that shit again," she snapped. "Oh, Mommy said bad words," came the little voice beside her. I watched Angie's face turn ashen. She did recover quickly, though. "You're right, honey. Mommy said some bad words." "It's okay, Mommy. You can say bad words when talking about boys." "Oh no, baby," Angie said, looking at the cute miniature of herself. "It's not okay even then." "Then why do you use those words when you talk about Daddy?" I successfully snorted my coffee through my nose, much to Erica's amusement. "Sorry," I said to the beautiful blonde glaring at me, and her cute mini-me who was giggling beside her. I was working on my ogre impersonation. Erica laughed. "Tommy boy, you're silly. And you're wrong. You're not an ogre. Ogres are green, and they do too end up with the princess, but only if they bring their donkey friend with them." I looked over at Angie and saw her eyes grow huge with warning. "Nope," I said, grinning. "Not going there." I chuckled at Erica and smiled. "You know I was green once upon a time?" "Really?" she said, her big blue eyes getting huge. "Oh yeah. It happened right after I showed a bunch of my buddies I could eat 100 McNuggets. I was green for days." "You?" the little tyke squealed and laughed. "So you might be right, Erica. If I ever hope to end up with a princess, maybe I'll have to go get a donkey friend?" Ouch. I reached down and grabbed my freshly kicked shin. "What happened to not going there?" Angie hissed softly as she glared at me. "I was just trying to help," I said meekly, not hiding my grin. "I say that a lot too," whispered Erica very loudly. "She doesn't believe me either." Angie burst out a short laugh and covered her mouth. Erica and I smiled at each other. Soon, Erica had finished her meal and went to go play in the play area. Angie and I moved so we could keep an eye on her but also talk freely. "I think you might have misunderstood me earlier," she said calmly, but avoiding making eye contact. "Okay," I said slowly. "It probably wouldn't be the first time." "No," she said, smiling as she turned towards me. "And probably not the last time either. When I said I was relieved you were telling people there wasn't anything sexual in our agreement, I think you might have taken it wrong." "All right, how should I have taken it?" "Not personally." She stared at me for a moment, then sighed deeply. "Tommy boy, I need you to promise to never repeat what I am about to say to you, especially not to Brandon or anyone at the gym." "Damn it, I don't even know why I am telling you this." "Angie, I can't promise that. I don't know what this is about. but I won't promise to keep a secret that might harm others. I can promise you if this is of a personal nature or could be embarrassing or harm you or Erica. I'll never breathe a word of it to anyone. If that's not okay, then please don't tell me. I won't be offended." She smiled. "Now I remember why I can tell you. Besides feeling guilty about acting like a drama queen earlier. Tommy boy, you're a nice guy. I sometimes forget your type is still out there." "Angie, Nope, it's my turn. So please let me finish," she said, smiling slightly. "The reason I was relieved to hear you were telling people that nothing sexual was promised was because I try to keep a balance between the being professional and being sexy. I know what I look like, Tommy boy. I've certainly used it to draw customers, but the truth is what you see isn't what you get with me. I am not what I appear to be. I know you've heard I used to be an exotic dancer. Actually, I stripped while trying to get through college back in Dallas. I was still dancing when I met Eric. There were some very bad things that happened down there, and my life was a mess when Eric and I got together. He managed the gym I was going to, and we soon were a couple. He was beautiful and sexy and a bodybuilder, and I fell for him hard. Soon, we were living together. Eric convinced me to get these," she said, lifting her jugs. "He said they'd help me make more money stripping, and he was right. They paid for themselves quickly. We got married soon after, and I got pregnant with Erica. My exotic dancing career was put on hiatus, much to Eric's dismay, but not to mine. Even though I am a bit of an exhibitionist, I got tired of being looked at like a piece of meat. I know, hypocritical isn't it? But it really got old quickly. After Erica was born, I started working at the gym both for extra money and to get back into shape. It became obvious being in good shape, having huge jugs and having my stripper reputation that I was drawing in a lot of male customers. That's when Eric found a business partner here in Brownwood, and we opened Main Street Fitness. Just like back in Dallas, Eric convinced me to use my body to drum up business. It wasn't like he was pimping me out since he was doing the same thing. We both danced at the Candy Cane for a while. I was there for a few months, and Eric did ladies-only nights and several bachelorette parties. If I'd known our business partner would turn into my husband's sugar mama, I would have stayed in Dallas. Less than 2 years after we opened the gym, Sugar Witch's rich old man died. She took all the money and moved to California. She also took my husband. Last I heard, Eric was a kept man out in San Diego. All he left me with was the gym, which is barely breaking even, and the burden of implants. Well, that's not completely true, I said, looking over at Erica. I saw Angie's face soften, and her warm smile made her beauty shine even brighter. No, she said, sighing. She's by far the best thing that has ever happened to me. But as for these, she said, I despise them. Then get rid of them, I said calmly, but it won't help as much as you might think. Angie, you're still one of the most beautiful and sexy women I've ever met. She smiled warmly again. Only this time it was at me. I felt my heart stop. Thank you for the compliment, but I am afraid you're wrong. These unfortunately do draw attention and make me stand out. I know I could get rid of them, but that takes money I don't have. It would also hurt the gym membership. Tommy boy, as much as I hate them, they do help keep food on the table for us. This gym is all I've got. I don't want to go back to taking my clothes off for men. I can't do that, Tommy. I didn't realize the gym was doing that badly. It's not, but Eric left me with a heavy bank loan and mortgage to pay off. When we first moved to Brownwood, we bought a new home up in the Twin Oaks Estates. It was beautiful and I fell in love with the area even if it was a little pricey. With all the debt Eric left me, I ended up quick selling the house and moving into an older, smaller home only a few blocks west of the gym. As for the gym, it's still doing well, but let's face it, when he left, so did several of our female members. Although he was a shallow, selfish prick, he was gorgeous. As eye candy, he pulled in a lot of female admirers. Between us, we were pulling in the members and the gym was turning into a small gold mine. Unfortunately, he decided sleeping with money was easier than working for it. We sat silently for several minutes, simply watching Erica play, then I heard Angie's soft voice. You know, she said softly, I wanted to be a physical therapist back in college. What stopped you? You're certainly intelligent and dedicated enough to do that. She looked very uncomfortable and a pained look spread across her face. I wasn't sure if it was a deep sadness or shame. Stupid choices and the bad results that came from them. I knew better than to push the subject of her past, but wanted to encourage her. I knew I had feelings towards this woman, but whether those were lust or friendship, I wasn't sure. Probably both. You know, you could probably finish up your degree at St. Catherine's. I know they offer that degree. I once dated a girl who was majoring in it. Possibly, she said. But how? I am a single working mother. I don't have the time or money. I snorted. Now who's making excuses? Her eyes flashed with some particularly vicious thought before it gave way to her amusement. Thank you, she said warmly. It's been a while since I've been able to talk to someone besides my neighbor, Mrs. Harper. Oh, I've several casual friends here in Brownwood, but none who I can really talk to. I know it may sound conceited, but it is true. Most women can't get past their poor little pretty girl gag reflex. I know I gripe about it, but I worked hard to get this body and I've paid for these several times over. So friends, huh? I sighed. You okay with that? Well, yeah, I guess. She looked to Erica. Erica soon came bouncing back over to us. Tommy boy, did you see me? How could I miss such a pretty little girl with all that golden hair? It's not gold. It's blonde. Tommy boy, you're silly. Now watch me. She bounced off back into the play area, turning around several times to make sure I was still watching her. She misses her father, Angie stated quietly. Do you still have contact with him? Angie slowly shook her head while staring at her daughter. He calls on holidays and her birthday, but that's about it. I am sorry. I am not. Well, I guess I am for her. But one day she'd figure out what a shit he is and she'll be heartbroken. As for me, I hope his pencil falls off. We both chuckled and turned our attention back to Erica. I spent the next hour entertaining the little munchkin and had a better time than I would have expected. I did notice Angie watching us. She was stepping back and letting her daughter get her fill of male attention. I wasn't daddy, but I was an acceptable substitute for the evening. That night changed the way I interacted with the Miles girls. The hardest part of the plan Angie had me under was the amount and type of foods allowed. It was a pain in the butt at first, but I soon fell into a routine. The workouts themselves didn't change much, since I still got to stare at my beautiful trainer. There was one little addition, a little golden-haired munchkin. Erica sat in on a few of our workouts, and although quiet as is possible for a 4-year-old, her presence was felt. It didn't take long before I dropped the first 20 pounds, and Angie was her usual non-cheerleader self. I was surprised you didn't lose it faster, she stated in a less than enthusiastic, matter-of-fact tone. She saw my disappointment and sighed. Tommy boy, I knew you could do 20 easily since the first weight is the easiest to lose. Now it's time to start pushing. And push she did, as the workouts got more intense. I was so focused on my workouts I failed to notice how much Erica was getting more and more involved. Any doubts that she wasn't a miniature clone of her mother were laid to rest one day when Angie had to take a call in her office. I was struggling to complete my final set of bench presses with Brandon stepping in for Angie and spotting me. I was gassed and really fighting with the weights. Come on, Tommy Buns, she chirped loudly. Give me 5-6 more. Brandon snorted. Yeah, come on, Tommy Buns. I tried to glare at Brandon, but Erica interrupted. Push, Tommy Buns. Push, she barked. I heard laughter from several people working out near us. I groaned and finished my set with a new vigor. Afterwards, I looked at Brandon, and he looked like he was going to burst. A few minutes later, I led Erica back to her mother's office, where she quickly got lost in some of her toys she'd brought. Really, Angie? I hissed quietly while trying to stare down my petite trainer. Tommy Buns? Angie covered her mouth, but still couldn't keep from laughing. Well, it was better than some of the other ones she came up with at first. You could have ended up with Tummy Boy or Shreky Boy. Angie grinned as she stared into my eyes, trying to read me. At least, she continued as she laughed, she has good taste. She picked one of your better aspects. I groaned. Please, Angie. Having a cute little 4-year-old call attention to my but isn't high on my bucket list. She smiled. Okay, how do you feel about Tommy Bear? All right, not great, but better than Tommy Buns. Here's the deal then, she said with a twinkle in her beautiful blue eyes. I'll work on her to call you that if you work at getting those Neanderthals in there to stop calling me Mistos. I groaned. Agreed. Thankfully, I became Tommy Bear after only a couple days. There were a few stragglers, but it was bearable. It took a little while longer, but after several discussions and a few threats, there was a noticeable drop in Miss TOS comments. Soon, I was able to refocus my attention on my diet and made my 30-pound goal. The dance lessons began the next week. The Hawthorne Grand Ballroom was a blast from the past. It was surprisingly smaller than modern hotels, but very, very elegant. It was here that 10 to 20 various couples learned and practiced their ballroom dancing once a week. The first time I held Angie, I was hooked. Normally, with most dancing, there is a gap between the couple, but not with us. It was like a slow dance to classical music. I was in heaven. As the workouts continued and I approached my 40-pound goal, I found I could hold her even closer. Much to Angie's surprise, I picked up the footwork quickly and rarely stepped on her toes. We'd only been practicing a month before Angie came up to me and asked me to meet with her in her office. "Tommy boy," she said calmly, "I'd like to modify our agreement." "All right," I said as I sat down. "Is there a reason?" She nodded. "I'd like for you to consider working with one of the women here at the gym in an arrangement similar to ours." "Okay," I said warily. "What's the punchline?" "No joke. There's a young lady who I feel would greatly benefit from an agreement like ours." "And you suggested me?" "No. She approached me with the idea and that it should be you." "Okay. Besides the obvious question of who, why me? Angie, there are a bunch of better candidates here at the gym to pick from. They're better looking, more fit, and would make better trainers than I could. Perhaps, but she suggested you, and I have to agree. Yes, there are guys in this gym that are in better condition and would make very good trainers, but they don't have what you currently have. Tommy boy, your recent dedication and results have raised more than a few eyebrows. The way you've handled our agreement and defended me has gotten the attention of several women. As for the woman making the request, she knows you understand our current arrangement. It would be for a shorter duration than our agreement, but as a reward you'd take her out on the town. Nothing sexual, simply a fun night out." "Huh." Angie laughed. "Tommy boy, in many ways you're safe." "Great," I groaned. "Just how I wanted to be known as safe." "Don't knock it, Buster. If you weren't safe, I'd have never agreed to our arrangement, and I certainly wouldn't have let you near Erica." "All right, Angie. Who is it?" "Tara Reyes. The college girl with the long black hair?" Angie nodded. "Angie," I said softly, "she's really pretty even though she's heavy. She could have several of the guys here falling over themselves hoping to work out with her." Angie chuckled. "No question about it, Tommy boy," she said, smiling. "You're the right choice. Meet with her and talk before you turn it down." "Okay, I'll meet with her." "Now," Angie said in a more business tone, "if you do this, then you'll be working out with her probably right after our sessions, and she'll be replacing me as your dance partner for a while." I tried to keep the disappointment off my face, but apparently she could see through it and smiled. "Since that's the case," she continued, "do you think you can reach your 50-pound goal by July 4th? "Yeah, it's possible." "Well, if you do make it, I know a little girl and her mama who would like you to join us for a picnic on the Brownwood Square and watch the fireworks." She looked over at me and smiled. "I think I can meet that deadline." "Good. I'd hate for her to be disappointed." I'd met Tara before, only in passing, a few times at the gym. When we sat down together in Angie's office, I did a quick assessment of the young woman sitting across from me. She had a strong Hispanic look about her. From her long straight hair to her beautiful dark brown eyes, her appearance attested to her heritage. She was obviously overweight, but had a very pretty face. I guess she was about 5.5 feet tall and weighed somewhere close to 200 pounds. What surprised me the most was how she acted when she was alone with me. Normally, you could hear her voice and laugh throughout the gym when she was with a group of people, but privately she was reserved, almost timid. "Thank you, Tommy boy," she said, averting her eyes. "Tara, please," I said calmly. "I am the one who should feel honored." She looked at me with those huge brown eyes and smiled. "Angie said I could trust you." I think she might be right. Tara went on to tell me what she was wanting. She wanted to lose 40 pounds in a little less than 3 months. She wanted to reach this goal before her senior year at St. Catherine's began. She was willing to adhere to the plan Angie set for her, and it was very aggressive. I decided if this girl was willing to do this, then I'd do my best to help her, so I agreed. Tara looked at me and her eyes teared. "Tommy boy, I want to be honest with you," she said softly. "One of the reasons I wanted you to be the one to help me was because I'd heard a little about your past marriage." "Brandon," I growled to myself. "Is it true? Did your wife leave you because of your weight?" I sighed. That was one of the reasons. Truth is, she really didn't give any reasons. She just gave up on the marriage and started sleeping with other guys. "I'm sorry," she said, staring at me. "I'm sorry she did that to you. It's because I believe you can empathize with my situation that I chose you. Sean, my ex-boyfriend, and I broke up a month ago." "I am sorry," I said gently. "I know it's for the best, but it still hurts. I could have married him before finding out what a scumsucker he was." I overheard him talking with his friends one night at a party. One of his buddies asked him if he was going to marry me. She choked back a sob and a single tear fell down her cheek. "Tara, you don't have to tell me this." "Yes, I do, Tommy boy. I brought up a painful memory for you when I asked you about your ex-wife. It's only fair you know my situation." When he was asked that question, he laughed. The scumsucker actually laughed. He said why buy the cow when he was getting the milk for free? Then he said he liked dating me because he could do all sorts of nasty things with me and I'd let him. He said most fat girls were like that. I was crushed. I did those things because I thought we loved each other. I was so hurt I couldn't even get mad. That came later. So you see, Tommy boy, I need a guy who knows what it's like to be treated that way by someone they loved because of their weight. I need a guy who's working hard to get his life back on track. I also need him not to be some arrogant shit. I need someone safe. Everything Angie tells me about you says you're the perfect choice. Damn, there's that word again. I agreed to work with Tara, as if I could turn her down after all that. Our workouts would be right after mine with Angie. She'd also be working out with her girlfriends on those other days. I wasn't sure she would reach her goal, but it looked like she was going to try. After 2 weeks, it was evident this girl was serious. She absolutely attacked the workouts. Her dedication and energy were contagious and invigorated my workouts as well. I reached my 50-pound goal with a week to spare. I found Angie and Erica a few hours before dusk. It was still hot, but they had a blanket spread out on the grass and were beginning to unpack their picnic basket. I laughed when I saw them, because Erica looked like a mini-me of her mother. Well, at least a child version of her very grown-up mother. Both mother and daughter had on large straw sun hats and oversized tortoiseshell sunglasses. Erica had on a green child's halter top and a denim jean skirt, while Angie had on cut-off jean shorts and green halter top. Tommy bear. Erica squealed and ran over to me. She jumped up into my arms and I lifted the giggling ball of curls up to sky. We're going to see fireworks, she said, laughing. What? Fireworks? I thought we were going to have a picnic. You're silly. We're going to have both. I laughed, looked over at Angie, noticed her megawatt smile and found myself smiling even more. We sat back down and began to enjoy our picnic. I noticed immediately that Angie was wearing a huge rock on her finger that had to be a good 2-carat diamond. She noticed my stare and laughed. Insect repellent, she stated, grinning. It's so big, I said, grinning back. Angie? I asked her while Erica was busy playing. I'm not sure what my role is here. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to act like we're together to help ward off unwanted attention, but I don't want to offend you. I won't lie to you. I feel very protective of you and Erica. She grinned. Thank you, Tommy boy, but I am a big girl. Your role tonight is as a friend. If I need any help, I'll be sure to let you know. Besides, my big fake rock here tends to help keep the interruptions at a manageable level. I think she saw the disappointment in my face, and her expression morphed from thankful to humorous. Tommy boy, this is why I agreed to let you take me out before the Christmas ball. We need to be comfortable as friends, or we'll be mistaken as a couple. Well, I wouldn't want to cause any problems with you or your boyfriend. She laughed. Boyfriend? Not likely. Oh, there have been a few men I've dated since my divorce simply to remind myself I am still a woman, but those have been rare. For the most part, I rarely go out with a man more than twice. She looked up and smiled. Tommy boy, I guess I really am that tease you've called me before. The simple fact is, I don't sleep with a man unless I am in some kind of relationship with him. I currently have a man friend that I have a friends with benefits type of relationship with. We get together whenever he's in town. Lucky dog. I sighed as Angie laughed. Hey, wait a minute, I said, perking up noticeably. I am a friend. Stop right there, stud, she said, grinning. That role is already filled. Hey, I said, smiling, a guy can dream, can't he? She snorted and looked at me a few moments before turning her attention to Erica. The rest of the evening went well with only a few glitches. One of those glitches was a big drunk guy who wouldn't take Angie's rebuffs. He finally left after she got nasty and cold to him. Later on, right before the fireworks were to begin, Erica had to go to the bathroom. I told Angie I'd take her so she could ride up on my shoulders and still see any fireworks if they started before we got back. Naturally, the line to the women's restroom was a mile long. So I kind of flushed a bunch of guys out of the way and took Erica into the men's room. I put her in a stall and guarded the door. When she'd finished, she threw me a curveball. Tommy bear, she whispered very loudly. I have to wash my hands. I looked over at the sinks and saw they were located next to a line of guys at the urinals. I decided against pressing my luck. Fortunately, I still had a half-empty bottle of water. Hey, Goldilocks, I said laughing. Let's wash our hands outside. Okay, she squeaked and led me out through the line of guys waiting. I could hear some of the snickers. It took us a little longer to get back to Angie, since it was quickly getting dark. As we approached our picnic blanket, I saw Angie had company. It was the big drunk, and this time he had a couple of friends with him. Angie was still seated on the blanket, but the big guy was standing next to her while the others hovered a little farther to the right. I could tell by Angie's body language she was agitated. Her fists were clenched, as was every muscle in her beautiful body, and her face was completely emotionless. As we approached, Erica squealed and ran up to hug her mother. "Mommy, Tommy Bear and I went to the men's room," she said, laughing. Angie looked up at me and shot me a look which said I was in trouble. I ignored it. I walked right up to her, leaned over, and kissed her. "Hey, baby," I said. "The women's line would have taken an hour. We'll talk about it later, honey." I looked up at the three men and smiled. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" I stared at each one separately. The two new guys wouldn't be a problem, but the big drunk glared back at me. "Nah," said one of the guys. "We're just leaving." The two men began to leave when one of them called back to the big drunk. "Hey, come on, Bill. Let's head back over to the group." "Nah," said the big drunk. "I'll be over in a minute." Bill looked over at me and sneered. Almost as if on cue, the fireworks began. Several people behind us asked Bill to sit down or move so they could see. "Screw you," he barked back at them. I went over and stood beside him on his right. He was a big boy, a couple of inches taller than I was, and appeared to be in pretty good shape. We stood there silently, and to the casual observer it appeared we were watching the fireworks. "You ain't her boyfriend," he slurred. "She's way out of your league." "Yeah, she is, but she's a friend, and she's made it clear she's not interested in you. So why don't you move on?" "Screw you," he growled, "which don't know what she wants. Wait till I give her a little taste of what a real man is like. She'll scream and cry." Sometimes Karma is a witch, and sometimes she's got one hell of a sense of humor. Just then, an exceptionally big and loud set of fireworks went off and Erica squealed with delight. Everyone's attention was distracted. Was it honorable? Hell no, and it certainly wasn't fair. But I found every time I try to fight fair it turns out badly, usually because I am the only one doing it. My sucker punch caught him right in the temple, and he crumbled to the ground. When his friends turned and looked at him lying there, they froze. "I think he must have passed out," I said coldly. "You might want to take your friend back to your group." The two guys gathered a now groggy Bill up and half walked and half dragged him back into the crowd. As I sat down next to Angie, there was a smattering of applause behind us. Angie continued to sit with Erica between her legs with her arms wrapped around her little girl. Both mother and daughter stared into the night sky waiting for the next firework. "I take it you needed to let off a little testosterone?" Angie said softly, still looking to the sky. "Feel better?" "Oh yeah," I said, chuckling. "Much." "Good," she said, letting a small smile escape. "Still concerned about Erica's adventure to the men's room, Mama Bear?" She turned and stared at me. "None, Tommy Bear." The rest of the show was a blast. Erica squealed and laughed and had a wonderful time. Sometime during the show, she crawled up in my lap and pulled my arms around her. I shot a quick glance over at Angie and saw a mixture of surprise and amusement. After the show, I walked them to their car with Erica riding on my shoulders. I could feel her little body starting to list one direction then another as the munchkin was starting to fall asleep. As I passed one of the store windows, I saw our reflection and froze. Angie came to an abrupt halt as well and peered around me to see what I was looking at. I saw was big blonde guy with a beautiful little blonde girl on his shoulders. Beside him was a stunning blonde woman who looked both casual and sexy as hell. It was an image that burned itself in the back of my mind. When we finally got to Angie's car, I placed Erica in the back and secured her in her car seat. Her eyes were barely open. "Good night, Tommy Bear," she mumbled and yawned. "Good night, Goldilocks." As I stood, I immediately realized Angie was now next to me. Her nearness surprised me and I froze. "Thank you, Tommy boy," Angie said softly as she reached up and kissed me gently on the cheek. "It'll be a night she'll remember for a long time." "You're welcome, Angie. She's a cute one, almost as pretty as her mama." Angie grinned. "Thank you," she said, then paused as if she was going to say something else before going around her car and getting into the driver's seat. "Good night, Tommy boy," she said, and closed the car door. "Good night, Mama Bear," I muttered. After they'd left, I weaved through the crowd heading to my car. When I got there, I heard an unwelcome voice behind me. "Hey, Ahole, where you going so fast?" I turned around and saw Bill standing there with his two buddies. They didn't seem quite as drunk as before. Bill had a nasty bruise on his cheek, and part of his right eye was swollen and starting to turn black. The look on his face told me he remembered exactly how he got it. There's a simple fact not a lot of guys talk about growing up. If you fight dirty once, then you can expect your opponent to return the favor. It usually leads to taking a beating at some point. The object is to minimize it. I looked around the parking lot and saw several onlookers. That meant this was going to happen quickly and wouldn't last for very long before event security or the Brownwood police would be on the scene. "I am going to," Bill roared as he stepped toward me with his fist drawn back. He didn't finish the threat. Like I said before, I am no martial artist and certainly don't have military training, but I was in a hell of a lot better shape than I'd been in years. I was closer to my college playing weight now, and the flab had started turning into muscle again. I was also still very quick. Bill's punch grazed the side of my head as I launched myself at him. I caught him with a forearm to his mouth and felt his head snap back as he fell. I then threw a straight right at his nearest buddy and caught him in the nose, knocking him to his knees. The third guy hit me a couple blows to the head before I was able to bull rush him. He tried to sidestep me, but I clotheslined the a-hole. I swear I saw one of his feet fly above his head. I didn't get to revel in my initial victory for long. Bill's first buddy slammed into my legs, and before I could throw him off, Bill landed a haymaker to my right eye. Damn, that son of a witch could hit. I didn't go down with the first punch, but the second one put me there. From then on, it was basically trying to protect my face and balls as the three of them kicked the shit out of me. I vaguely heard some screams and shouting, then the whooping sound of a police siren. All told, the fight probably lasted a minute or two. I'd received multiple blows and kicks, but for the most part, one came out of it pretty well. Other than Bill's 2 punches and a few kicks to the ribs, the rest of the damage simply resembled what I'd received during a typical football game back in college. I knew I'd have to go to the ER and check out the ribs. I figured they were bruised, but I wouldn't take a chance. The cop who broke up the fight asked me if I needed an ambulance, but I declined and told him I'd drive myself over to get checked out. I knew I probably looked worse than I actually felt, since my eye was quickly swelling shut. My trip to the Sacred Heart ER was for the most part uneventful. I ran into a nurse I'd seen before. She was pretty hard to forget, even though she had to be around 40. She had almost orange hair and a little droop to one eye. Even with that, she was still beautiful. Not on Angie's level, but few women were. Her name was Bree, and her husband used to work with my boss, Maria. I knew Maria still kept in contact with Bree and her husband, Zach, even though he still worked at GRYM Engineering Solutions. When I asked her if she was the ER nurse, she laughed and said no, that she was only covering for someone. She said she was a head nurse up in the children's ward. She got me signed in and into a cubicle. It didn't take long before an older doctor came in to see me. He was Indian or Pakistani and said his name was Dr. Kali. I started to make some smart comment, but he beat me to it. "So, fight much?" he said, as he poked around my damaged areas. I grunted both in response and in pain. "Forget to duck?" he said with a sly grin. I started to laugh, but my ribs throbbed and I doubled over. "We'll need to get those x-rayed," he said, his smile disappearing. "Other than that, it looks like you'll heal in time." He went on about avoiding MMA matches and taking it easy for a few days, then I was wheeled out to x-ray. Ended up they were only bruised, like I'd suspected, but I did get some very good pain pills. I spoke briefly with the cop again, and I knew he had to file a report. It wasn't going to go anywhere, so it was basically a waste of time. With bruised ribs and an eye that was swollen shut, I made my way back to my apartment. Hell of a night, I thought. I wonder what fireworks wait for me tomorrow? After my 4th of July altercation, I tried to avoid people. I was able to stay away from Angie and Erica for a few days, but not from those at work. "I hope the other guy looks worse," Maria said as she tilted her head to examine my face better. "Other guys," I said softly. "Are you okay to work?" "Yeah, but I probably need to avoid meeting clients face-to-face for a bit." She nodded, and then I saw her lips purse. "I suppose there's a police report?" I nodded. "Any chance of you getting arrested?" "Nah, I doubt it. I wasn't actually the victim, but I can't imagine anything will come of it." "All right," she said softly. "We'll work around this." "Oh, and Tommy?" I looked at her, wondering if she was going to lecture me or hug me. She always came across as some old stern librarian type, but those who knew her knew she cared for others very deeply. "Please learn to duck," she said without breaking a smile. The laughter in her eyes betrayed her. "So I've been told," I said, chuckling. Fortunately, I was able to lose myself in my work the rest of the day. Other than the good-natured jabs by Jonas and Armand, things returned to normal quickly. It was a couple days later that Angie got a look at me, and while Maria was difficult to read, Angie wasn't. She was a mixture of anger and guilt. She was pissed at me for not calling her that night at the ER, and then racked with guilt when she realized it was Bill and his buddies that had worked me over. It took a little bit, but I convinced her it was my fault. If I hadn't sucker punched him, this probably wouldn't have happened. I ended up being reminded repeatedly we were friends and friends call friends when they're in trouble. I realized she was trying to make me feel better, but every time she called us friends, it felt like she was emphasizing that's all we'd ever be. After our discussion, I focused on building my love life. I finally accepted that Angie had her own love life, and I wasn't going to be a part of it. All we'd ever be were good friends, and I needed to learn to live with it. It was difficult, but I managed. Sure, I fantasized about Angie on occasion, but I started looking for more realistic possibilities. There were several ladies at the gym who were of interest, and I found myself starting to go and talk to them more and more. There were also women I'd met from work who seemed to be open to dating me now. I'd started going out on occasion, and a couple of those had ended up back in my apartment. Forgettable, I sneered to myself. Only slightly better than one-night stands. One bright spot was Tara. As we continued our workouts, it was getting more and more difficult not to stare at her. She was actually working her butt off, and it was starting to show. She caught me more than once looking at her yoga pants. Her laughter always made me blush slightly. "Thank you, Tommy boy," she said, giggling after catching me visually undressing her. "Oh hell, Tara." I sighed. Was I staring again? She nodded and grinned. "Tara, I am sorry." "Tommy boy, I don't mind. It's been a while since I've been looked at like that." I snorted. "I doubt that." "Well," she said blushing, "yeah, but it's been a while since it was a nice guy who was doing it instead of some creeper or dog." We both laughed, but for different reasons. She laughed because she'd given me a compliment and was pleased with the situation. I laughed because I was trying to hide my irritation. Safe. Nice. Damn, I was starting to hate those words. For the next 6 weeks, I tried to work as hard as Tara did. At the end of it, I'd made my 60-pound goal and Tara had lost 30 pounds. It didn't look like she'd make her 40 by the start of school, but she'd be close. Since I'd made weight, I set up my date with Angie. We'd settled into a friendship type of relationship. The only real difference was I wasn't panting after her like a dog. If she noticed, she never said anything about it. Erica had turned 5, was starting kindergarten, and it allowed Angie to start taking classes at St. Catherine's. She'd started working towards being a physical therapist. When I picked her up, I met Erica at the front door. "Tommy Bear," she squealed. "Hey, Goldilocks." I reached down and picked her up. "You taking Mama out on a date?" "Yep, that's the plan." "Can I come too?" "Not this time, sweetheart," said an elderly woman behind her. She was a thin, frail woman who looked to be in her 60s. With her oversized bifocals and short gray hair, she had the grandma look down. "Monica Harper," she said, extending her hand. I shook it and was surprised by the strength she still had in her grip. "Tommy Swanson," I replied. "I know," Mrs. Harper said, smiling. "I've heard all about Tommy Bear and the men's room." I groaned. She laughed. "Amazing what little eyes and ears pick up. By the way, you look very nice tonight, Mr. Swanson," she continued, then reached and straightened my tie. "Thank you." I dressed up for the evening with a suit jacket and tie since I was taking Angie to D-Vestos on the square. With the weight loss, I've been able to wear some of my better clothes from college. When Angie came out of the bedroom, I nearly choked. She was wearing a simple strand of pearls with her version of a little black dress, but it was stunning. I had to remind myself we were going out only as friends before I embarrassed myself by drooling. The entire evening was like that, me reminding myself this wasn't a real date. Angie didn't do anything to make me think differently, so I slowly relaxed into having a casual night out with a beautiful woman. D-Vestos was both incredible and expensive, but it was expected. My beautiful date was easily worth it. Angie was only hit upon once while we were there, and it was when she was returning from the ladies' restroom. It was very different when we decided to go dancing and went down the square to the strobe. We hadn't even sat down before she was asked to dance. It was the first of a couple dozen times. Surprisingly, Angie turned each one down, even after I reminded her we were out tonight only as friends. She reminded me she'd done the same thing when we were out on the 4th of July. Her reasoning was simple. She was out with me and wasn't looking to set up a date with someone else. The only times I struggled that night was when I held her closely as we danced to the slower songs. My gut had been greatly reduced, and I was able to pull her even more tightly into my chest. The warmth of her breath, her incredible scent made me lose myself in my own little fantasy where she was mine. Unfortunately, those slower songs were way too short and were sparsely played during the evening. The night ended with a gentle kiss on the cheek. "Thank you, Tommy boy," she said softly. "It's been a long time since I've been on such a fun date. You were the perfect gentleman." Now I had another phrase to add to my list of annoying labels besides nice and safe. Perfect gentleman. I decided shortly afterwards I needed to get serious about looking for someone who I could possibly fall in love with and with whom I could spend the rest of my life. I'd mentally selected a few possibilities and vowed to myself to ask them out during the upcoming week. As usual, fate had other ideas. The first interruption of my plans was work-related. The network install took up all my time, other than my workout sessions with Angie and Tara. Second was that even though classes at St. Catherine's had started 2 weeks earlier, Tara hit her weight goal. It was a privilege to set up a date with her for the upcoming Friday night. She told me to pick her up at her apartment that she was sharing with 2 of her girlfriends. When I picked up Tara, I was taken back. She wore black knee-high laced boots, a pair of jeans she must have poured herself into, and a metallic blood red and black corset that squeezed her waist. "Damn girl," I said, stepping back and making a show of looking her over from head to foot. She giggled softly as she pirouetted, basking in my obvious approval. She let her long black hair whip around her like a cape, and when she was done it hung to one side and draped over one side. I was amazed at her. She epitomized the concept of what a big, beautiful woman should be. Amazing what a little makeup, a corset, and a pair of Spanxes can accomplish, don't you think? I think all those things can certainly help, but only if you've something already there to start with. And you, Tara, were already something. You look beautiful and sexy as hell. Her dark brown eyes danced and her smile was dazzling. Apparently this big dumb animal can say the right thing every once in a while. I took her out to eat and was surprised when she suggested Sherman's Wharf, a little seafood place off the interstate. Definitely not upscale, but a good place for freshwater fish and shellfish. I'd expected her to want to go to one of Brownwood's more high-class places like Divestos or Maison Le Rouge. She must have seen my surprise and laughed. "Tommy boy, I plan on dancing my bum off tonight. A salad at the wharf will be perfect. Besides, I can barely breathe in this thing and eating something heavy might make it explode." "You say that like it would be a bad thing," I said, laughing. "You wish." She giggled, but continued to stare at me with her smoky gaze. "This is your night. Beautiful. Your wish is my command." "Well then, good sir," she said in a haughty voice, "doth my carriage await?" "After you, my lady," I said, bowing deeply. She was right. Our citrus mixed green salads with grilled prawns were the perfect beginning to a night of dancing. Tara had decided on the club scene at the Strobe, which was fine with me, since my past experiences at the City Lights were still a little fresh in my mind. The evening started out fantastic. Tara was looking very sexy and was getting the attention of several guys. When the first one came over to ask her to dance, she surprised me by looking over at me and asking my permission. Of course I gave it, but afterwards asked her about it. "Tara, thank you for asking me, but remember this is your night. If you want to dance with a guy, I am certainly not going to get in your way." She looked at me for a moment with disappointment. "Tommy boy, you're my date for the evening and I always leave with the guy who brought me. Now, if I get to dance with any guy I wanna, you need to get off your butt and get out there on the dance floor with me." That set the tone for the next couple hours. Tara dancing with me most of the time, but also dancing occasionally with another guy. All in all, we were having a great time. But like all good things, there's always a bug which tries to ruin it. This time it was a pest from my past. I didn't notice her until I heard her voice from behind us. "Oh my God, look at you," her voice grated. "It looks like you finally pushed yourself away from the buffet." I turned and saw Susie standing there looking like a hot adult star. Her clothes, her makeup, everything about her screamed sex. It was a look she could pull off both well and easily. Accompanying her were 2 men. The first was a big, tall, well-built blonde about my age who was dressed in a several $1,000 Italian-style suit. He looked European and had a snotty, smug look on his face. The other was a shorter, slight-built man who made me think of a middle-aged Johnny Depp trying to look like a bookworm. I recognized him as one of the Hawthorns and I'd seen him at the Strobe several times over the past year. He was watching our situation with an emotionless gaze. "Oh my God," I replied in a mocking tone. "It looks like the herpes sores have finally healed. Did you finally get those other little things cleared up, or simply accept it as a curse for being a 304? "Screw you," she sneered. "I told you before, never again, and besides," I said, returning her sneer, "I doubt you've changed for a 20 anyways." Her blonde companion now had a look of pure hatred as he stepped towards me. Hawthorne placed a hand on his arm and shook his head. "Easy there, Hans," I spat. I wasn't doing anything but enjoying my date before I was propositioned by this lady. By the way, if you two are her dates tonight, I'd make sure to verify her medical release. I am pretty sure some of those things weren't curable. I saw the big European's face blanch and noticed a small smirk on the bookworm's face. "I see you're moving up in weight classes for dates these days," Susie taunted as she glared at Tara. I saw the hurt in Tara's eyes. I reached over and took her hand. It was enough to briefly distract her from Susie and look into my eyes. What she saw there made her smile. I turned back and grinned at Susie. Damn, Susie. I laughed. It must be painful knowing a woman you think is beneath you could, with just a smile, have a guy who wouldn't touch your diseased kitty with a dead tool. You may look good on the outside, but everyone who really knows you knows what a rotting, putrid skank you are on the inside. Your ex-husband sure as hell was lucky to get away from you. You. She began to scream, drawing attention from several other tables. You. That's enough. Hawthorne barked in a voice much deeper and stronger than I expected. Jürgen, please take the lady back to our table, Hawthorne commanded. Jürgen glared at me before he acquiesced and guided a fuming Susie away. When they left, Hawthorne turned to Tara and me. My apologies, he said. It wasn't my intent to ruin your evening. I hadn't realized her plans when she guided us over to your table. Please allow me to make amends. With that, he disappeared into the crowd. A few minutes later, one of the waitresses escorted us up to the VIP area where a bottle of champagne was waiting. Oh hell yes. Tara giggled. Now this is more like it. Over the next hour we laughed and danced and forgot about our little run-in with Susie the Witch. When we left the club, we decided to take a long, leisurely stroll around the town square. The September night was warmer than normal, but after hours of dancing in a club, it was nice to cool down. Despite the mild weather, Tara used it as an excuse to snuggle. As she pressed her soft body into mine, I knew I wasn't going to complain. At the end of our walk, I held her in my arms and kissed her. Her lips were hot and moist, and I felt her lush body mold to fit mine perfectly. Minutes later, we had to come up for air. She stared at me, and I wasn't able to tell what she was thinking. All I could see in her eyes was the faint flicker of the streetlights. However, her voice told me what I needed to know. Take me to your apartment, she whispered huskily. We barely made it into my apartment before we were exploring each other. Tara hungrily devoured my mouth with her kisses as we stumbled over to the couch. She looked up at me with her huge brown eyes looking for my approval. It wasn't difficult to give. Wow, I said softly. You're even more beautiful than I'd imagined. Her face beamed with my praise. I kissed her from her warm, pouting red lips on her pretty face. Tommy boy, she panted as I paused. Condom, she hissed softly. I am not stupid. I complied. As a matter of fact, I complied a couple more times that night as I explored and kissed every inch of her. We woke up snuggled in each other's arms. It was a sensation I'd sorely missed. It was over a week before I met with Angie again. That network installation had taken most of the week and required long, boring hours of running cable. During my session, I could tell she wanted to say something. By the end of my workout, I couldn't take it anymore. All right, Angie, I panted, still trying to catch my breath. Say what you need to say. What did you do to that girl? She asked calmly. I figured immediately she was talking about Tara. I talked to Tara a couple times last week. First to thank her for a wonderful evening, but also to make sure she didn't think of me as a one-night stand. I'd even asked her out again, but told her it would have to be after my network project was through. She seemed to understand and was interested in going out with me again. So Angie's question threw me a bit. Why? I asked alarmed. Is she okay? Angie snorted. Better than okay, she said laughing. Tommy boy, she's absolutely floating on air. What exactly did you do? I am sorry, Angie, but that would have to come from Tara. I will say I treated her as special as she truly is. Well, you certainly made an impression. She eyed me warily. You realize she'd be yours if you simply ask her. She thinks you walk on water right now. I laughed. Well, that won't last long. She'll see my feet of clay soon enough. I can't see us being long-term. She's simply too young for me. She's got her whole life in front of her, and she doesn't need an old guy with so much baggage dragging her down. An old guy like you? Angie grinned. Well, old compared to her. I wish I was younger, though, because she's special. She's got an incredible amount of sexuality just waiting to be released. Whatever guy she falls for that takes the time is going to be rewarded with a woman who'll rock his world. I turned and looked at Angie since she'd grown quiet. She had an odd look on her face as she stared back at me. What? I asked, clueless. Nothing, she said and packed up her stuff to leave. You're an unusual one, Tommy boy. I didn't know how to respond to that. At least she hadn't called me nice or safe. Over the next month and a half I struggled to break the 70-pound barrier, but finally succeeded. Tara and I went out several times and had a great time, both in and out of the bedroom. Besides the incredible feeling of waking up with a warm, soft woman beside me, we were quickly becoming friends as well. Even with all that, I knew we weren't going to end up together. There was a spark between us, but it wasn't nearly as strong as I'd had with Leah. It was somewhat bittersweet and humorous the last time we went out. I took her to a Crusader football game. We were enjoying ourselves and each other's company, even though we both knew our relationship was changing from romantic to simply friends. While we were going to our seats, I noticed Tara kept looking back over her shoulder. I followed her gaze. A short, geeky-looking guy glared back at us. "That's Sean." Tara snorted. "I am sure he's still pissed off." "Well, if you wanted to show him what he lost, you're doing a great job of it." "Tara, you look great." "Ah," she cooed and beamed up at me. "That's so sweet." She glanced back at her ex-boyfriend and flipped him off. She giggled. "I'm sure that's not why he's so upset, though. I may have told some people he has a tiny pencil that goes off with the slightest touch." She looked up at me and smiled evilly. "Okay, I confess, maybe it was a bunch of my girlfriends and the girls in most of my classes and several sorority girls and maybe a few thousand people on Facebook and Twitter. I might be considered a fat witch in some circles," she continued. "But I am only a witch for those I care about, and the fat part, well, I am working on that. But for him to prove to a bunch of people he doesn't have a tiny pencil, that's going to be difficult without getting arrested." I burst out laughing. "Damn, girl. Remind me not to get on your bad side." "Oh, please, Tommy boy. You've seen my bad side. As a matter of fact, you've seen me from every side." "Oh yeah," I said softly and smiled. "Down boy," she said, laughing. "I am not into public sex." "Well, at least I don't think I am." I snorted, but she interrupted my train of thought. "But it would still only be sex, wouldn't it, Tommy boy?" "No, Tara," I said softly. "It wouldn't be just sex." She snuggled into my arms. "I know we care about each other, but not enough to make a lifetime commitment, right? Tara, It's okay, Tommy boy. It really is. I know we love each other, but more as friends than lovers. I hope you know how much I care for you and how grateful I am to you. I hope I've showed you how much I appreciate what you've done for me. So much more than I could have ever hoped for. Beautiful." "Good," she said, staring intently into my eyes. "No guy has ever treated me like you have, like I was something special. Tara, you are special. You're going to be the center of some lucky man's world when you find the right guy." She crushed our lips together and held me tightly. "Down, boy. We've got a game to watch." I groaned softly as she laughed. It took a little while, but we finally settled into our seats. During the game, we were joined by a bunch of her friends. I suddenly felt very old. One friend of hers was an interesting-looking guy. He had a nice set of tats going up each arm and on his neck. His dark hair was spiked with electric blue tips, and he had his nose pierced. All in all, he had a semi-goth look. Even with his appearance, it was his stare that got my attention. It wasn't the same as Tara's old boyfriend had, but it still gave me the creeps. I mentioned it to Tara after the game. We won, by the way, 24-0. Go Crusaders. "Oh, that's Jeremy," Tara said, and blushed slightly. "Don't let the piercings and tats fool you. He's a really, really nice guy. He's into music and is an electronics wizard. He already works part-time as a sound tech at a record studio." "Tara," I said reassuringly, "we're not exclusive. I care about you, even if all we ever are is friends." She smiled and gave me a big hug. "I think he wants to ask me out," she said, smiling. "He's got great taste." Her smile grew even brighter. I heard a week later that they were dating. I had to bust my butt in November to make the final 10 pounds. I think I worked out 4 times a week and severely cut my diet, but I made weight 4 days before Thanksgiving. Angie had contacted me earlier in the week. She and Erica were going to stay in Brownwood over Thanksgiving and wanted to know if I would like to join them. I'd already told my family I wasn't going to make it back to Wisconsin this year, so I accepted gladly. Angie said right after Eric had abandoned them, she'd started trying to make new Thanksgiving traditions with Erica. They'd somehow serve others in the community who were less fortunate before they had their Thanksgiving dinner. It sounded fine with me, so I volunteered to go with them. Late Thanksgiving Day morning found Angie, Erica, and me serving turkey dinners to the homeless at the Lighthouse Mission. The mission was located in the poorest, most crime-ridden part of Brownwood, the southwest corner of the city. The area was generally marked as starting at the corner of State Park Road, going north and south, and Old Southtown Road, going east and west. At the corner was the Candy Cane, Brownwood's premier strip club, and a biker bar called the Ice House. A block east was the Southtown Projects, the primary public housing in the area. The Lighthouse Mission was a couple blocks further south on State Park Road. As we drove there, I noticed Angie looking at the Candy Cane. I could tell she'd some very mixed emotions. I thought I could read lust and desire mixed in with sadness and hurt. Since it was the holidays, I left it alone. I am ashamed to say when we first got to the mission I had my guard up. I was overly protective of Angie and Erica, until Angie pulled me to the side and laughingly told me to relax. When I did, I was amazed at the way both mother and daughter lit up the entire place. I shouldn't have been surprised since a beautiful woman like Angie tends to do that naturally, even when they've dressed down in jeans and a t-shirt. Erica's no-fear attitude won the hearts of most of those there, both staff and guests. When she crawled up into an old bearded man's lap, I started to walk over until Angie touched my arm and nodded for me to just watch. I swear the smile on that old man's face as Erica laughed and giggled humbled me to the point it broke my heart. Tommy boy, I chided myself. You're such a spoiled, judgmental a-hole. The rest of the morning went smoothly, and I got to know several staff members, and even more of the people coming through there that day. The only notable thing which occurred was when I caught Erica chowing down on a cup of mashed potatoes and gravy. When I asked her if she was supposed to be doing that, she grinned at me with gravy dripping off her chin. It's okay, Tommy Bear. She giggled. They said I could have some. Besides, she whispered loudly, Mama cooked dinner. This is better. I choked out a laugh, as did several people around us. I was surprised again when we finally sat down in Angie's house for dinner. Angie wasn't a bad cook. As a matter of fact, she was very good. It was what we were having which explained Erica's earlier comment. It wasn't what anyone would call a traditional Thanksgiving Day dinner. There wasn't a huge turkey or mashed potatoes and gravy, corn drenched in butter, cranberry sauce out of a can. A green bean casserole, sweet potatoes, and pumpkin pie were missing as well. In their place was a spicy kale salad, curried pumpkin soup, apple parsnip mash, kale butternut squash stuffing, and herb-stuffed turkey breast. Surprisingly, it was good. Actually, some of it was better than good. Angie beamed as I complimented her. As we cleaned up, I noticed Angie staring at me. Thank you, she said softly so Erica wouldn't hear. I looked at her for a moment and knew I wasn't actually sure what she was thanking me for. She smiled at me, realizing my dilemma. Thank you for trusting me, she continued, and not trying to fill up on mashed potatoes and gravy at the mission. Yes, I know my little monster isn't thrilled about eating healthy. We both laughed and I told her again how wonderful dinner was. Then I mentioned to her I'd made my 80-pound goal. Good, she said dryly. I've already bought my dress. I don't think you'll be disappointed. I've reserved 2 tickets for the ball for us as well. We stared silently at each other until she gave me a small smile. I'd the feeling my world was about to get shaken up. I spent the next week getting everything set up. The Christmas ball tickets were expensive, but it wasn't unexpected. I knew this date was going to set me back a good amount of money. I rented my tux and even a limo service and tried not to be too anxious. When the night of the Christmas ball arrived, I was as nervous as a kid going to his first prom. I knocked on the front door and Mrs. Harper answered. Why, Mr. Swanson, she gushed. You look very dashing tonight. Mrs. Harper, you look as lovely as always, I retorted. Oh, bullshit, she said, then covered her mouth, hoping Erica hadn't overheard. We both turned around and saw Erica's attention was elsewhere. Looking at each other, we both chuckled. Tommy Swanson, Mrs. Harper said, shaking her head. I'd warn you not to be so obvious when you try flattering Angie, but I've seen her dress. She grinned mischievously. A pouting Erica came into the room with her lower lip sticking out. I had to hold back a laugh. Mama's got a pretty blue dress, but I don't. Hey, Goldilocks, I said, kneeling. How about if we go shopping for one later? Okay, she said softly as she hugged me, but it won't be as pretty as Mama's. Well, I'm sure we can find something close. I'm sure you'll be as pretty as oh my. I looked up and thought I was looking at an angel. Angie's deep sapphire gown draped over every lovely curve like an airy mist. Her blonde hair was elegantly pinned up, giving her a halo as it emphasized her long neck. A white gold necklace with multiple diamond teardrops looked like beads of dew on her skin. If she wanted to look like an adult version of a fairy princess, she exceeded herself. She was so stunning I actually couldn't speak. The effect of her appearance on me was obvious as I stood awestruck. Angie beamed even more while Mrs. Harper laughed. Angie, I finally managed to mutter, you look incredible. Thank you, she said, smiling broadly. Hope you aren't disappointed. Not possible, I said, taking her arm and leading her out to the limo. The Hawthorne Hotel was completely decorated for the season. The old landmark was decked out in its finest for the Christmas ball. Even with all the lavish decorations and the throng of people dressed in tuxedos and beautiful ball gowns, Angie drew an incredible amount of attention when she got out of the limo. Was she the most beautiful woman there? I thought so. If she wasn't, she had to be in the top 3. The evening began wonderfully as I took her out onto the ballroom dance floor. I held this vision of beauty in my arms as we danced. Her gown was thin enough that I felt the heat of her body. Her eyes danced and her smile broadened as she felt my excitement begin to build. Mercilessly, she teased me for the next hour, much to my delight. Even more satisfying was when she turned down each of the dozen men who asked her to dance. I knew this was my night in her eyes, and she was completely focused on me. I did see several people I knew since this was one of Brownwood's premier events of the year. I even saw Susie briefly. She looked sexy and gorgeous and was surrounded by several expensively dressed older men. Thankfully, I avoided her. Angie and I were sitting at our table, taking a rare break from the dance floor when a man came up behind Angie and asked her to dance. "I am sorry," Angie replied, still looking at me, "but I am." When she turned to her would-be suitor, she froze. "Daniel," she said softly. "Angela," he replied, smiling warmly. Angie's response made me take a closer look at the man. He was good-looking, and the tux he wore was high dollar. He appeared to be in his early to mid-30s and had the immaculate appearance of a model. He was about my height and very fit. He also had a face I recognized but couldn't place. The only thing that set me on edge was he didn't take his eyes off Angie. I wasn't even on his radar. Angie took care of that immediately. "Daniel, this is Tommy," she said, looking over at me. I couldn't read the myriad of emotions running across her face. "Tommy boy," Daniel said, smiling and offering his hand. "I've heard a lot about you. Congratulations on losing so much weight." I stood and shook his hand. "My apologies, sir. You have me at a disadvantage. I've heard nothing about you and don't know who you are." I noticed a flash of annoyance in his eyes before he reset the mask he showed to the public. "Of course," he said, his smile returning. "My name is Daniel Pickering." "Mr. Pickering, a pleasure to meet you." I stand corrected. "I've heard of you." "Hopefully, only good things," he said, laughing. I'd heard of Daniel J. Pickering. He was a high-profile lawyer out of the city. He was known as quite the playboy and had serious political aspirations. In short, he was a shark. A very attractive and well-financed one, but still a shark. "Angela," he said, turning his attention back to Angie, "you look absolutely stunning tonight." "Thank you, Dan. That's very kind. However, I'll have to decline the offer to dance. I am here with Tommy and my dance card is full." "Of course, but you can't fault a guy for asking such a beautiful woman to dance." "Tommy boy, it was very nice to meet you." "You too, Dan. The pleasure is all mine," I said, matching his insincerity. After he left, Angie asked me if I'd take her for a walk outside the ballroom. Naturally, I agreed. I offered my arm, and she took it as we left our table. We walked silently down to the hotel's atrium. I could hear her ragged breathing as she struggled to maintain her composure. When we were far enough away from others, she stopped and turned to face me. "Tommy," she said softly with tears in her eyes, "I am so sorry. I can't believe he treated you like that." She shook her head and fought back her tears. "That scumsucker," she hissed. "That arrogant scumsucker. He knew I'd be here with you tonight. Friend of yours, I am guessing?" I laughed, trying to put her at ease. When I saw her eyes grow wide, I knew. "Oh," I said softly, "that friend. He's normally not that way," she whispered. "He's usually a very nice guy, but lately he's gotten more and more possessive." "Angie, I really don't need to know this," I stated calmly. "I know, but I'd like you to." "Okay." I nodded. I knew Daniel before Eric ran off. Actually, I've met most of the people here tonight since Eric made it a point for us to meet every influential person we came across. After Eric left, Daniel and I became friends. He helped me put my life back together. Tommy, Dan and I were never exclusive, even though I've treated it like it was at times. He's very driven in his political pursuits and enjoys the public's attention. That's not the life I want, and I'd never expose Erica to that media circus. Dan also likes variety in his dating. I've known of at least a dozen women he's dated over the past 3 years. "Angie, you don't need to explain. You've been very upfront and clear we were only going to be friends. I understand and I am okay with it. Yours and Erica's friendship has become very important to me. You're very important to us as well. That's why I wanted you to know about my relationship with Dan. I am embarrassed he treated you way. He had no right. Then he called you Tommy boy like he was talking to a child. I wanted you to know I only mentioned you to him twice. The first time was when we made our weight loss agreement. I felt he needed to know. since with his position he might hear rumors or something. The second time was when I mentioned to him I was going shopping for my dress. This dress. Tommy, I never talked about you behind your back. Understand? All right, Angie, I said gently. I am not upset, nor am I offended, and I am fine with being called Tommy Boy. Mr. Pickering would have to do a hell of a lot worse than that to get under my skin. Angie, I am an average Joe out with the most beautiful woman in Brownwood. Of course people will look and judge. I am okay with it because you've made tonight very special for me. Not only because of how you look, but because you've honored and respected my feelings all evening. That is something very special, Ms. Miles, and I am deeply grateful to you for that. Now, since our evening isn't over yet, I'd like to dance with you. Why don't we stop at the restrooms outside the ballroom so you can freshen up? She smiled, reached up and kissed me on the cheek. Thank you, Tommy Boy. Thank you for being so understanding. Please, Angie, I said with a low growl. Please don't tell me I am a gentleman or a nice guy. I really don't want to be reminded how safe I am tonight as well. She stared at me for a moment, then smiled. Okay, stud, she said, chuckling. Let's go dance. We started walking back to the ballroom. I was hoping we could recapture the spirit of the evening. Angie told me it might take a little while to reapply her makeup, so I should take a seat or go back into the ballroom. I told her I'd wait for her right there. I saw and greeted a few familiar acquaintances that passed by as I tried desperately to patiently wait. Then I heard an unwelcome voice. Wow, you've changed, said a voice behind me. You've lost a lot of weight. I turned slowly and forced a polite smile. Leah, I said emotionlessly, you look good. It was a small lie. She was still attractive, but the elegant black flowing gown she wore couldn't hide the extra weight. She'd obviously put on a few more pounds. Standing beside her was the bookworm I'd run into at the strobe. He was extremely well dressed, but unlike when I'd seen him with Susie, he had his arm loosely around Leah's waist. And I did lose weight, I continued. About 140 pounds right after the divorce. However, recently, I've lost an additional 80 pounds as well. Was that rude? Probably, but I didn't want to sit there and try to fake any pleasantries with the witch. Apparently, my response stunned Leah and her date. While I didn't want to play nice with her, I'd nothing against him. Hello, I said, casually offering my hand. My name is Tom Swanson. I don't think we were properly introduced the last time we met. Theo, he said with a small smile, obviously sizing me up. Theo Hawthorne. Well, Theo, it was nice to meet you, but I need to get back to my date. What? Leah said coldly. The blow-up Barbie I saw you dancing with earlier? What did you do? Hire her for the evening. I glared at her for a moment, then decided it wasn't worth it. It seems, Mr. Swanson, Theo said smiling, you've quite the effect on the ladies. Only certain ones, Mr. Hawthorne, I said smiling back at him. But there's no accounting for taste, now, is there? Hey, baby. Angie's sweet syrupy voice replied from behind me. Miss me? I turned towards her, and she gently reached up and pulled my face down. The kiss she gave me made my knees give out. She pressed her soft lips into mine before she slowly pulled away. I couldn't help but make an audible groan as she smiled up at me. More than you'll ever know, I said breathlessly. Sorry it took me so long, she said in a soft voice. Angie looked over at Leah and gave her the once-over before dismissing her with a tiny snort. Oh, the games women play, I thought to myself and smiled. At least I am not the mouse these two cats were playing with this time. Angie looked at Theo and smiled politely. Hello, Theo. How's the family? Doing well, Ms. Miles, Hawthorne replied, fighting back a smile. Thank you for asking. I could see the surprise written on Leah's face. Angie turned her attention back to me and peered up into my eyes. Her eyes danced for a moment before her sweet smile turned evil. She pressed herself into me. I realized I might have spoken too soon about not being the mouse. By the way, sweetheart, she cooed, I've thought of several more ways we can burn off the extra calories from tonight. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small piece of fabric. It was the same dark blue as her dress. Carefully, she let the thong partially unravel before she carefully folded it and used it to replace my tux's pocket square. Gently, she patted my chest. So, she cooed again. Shall we dance some more before we get down to a more serious workout? I was at a loss for words but thankfully was able to nod. She took my arm and began leading me back into the ballroom. I stopped abruptly and slowly turned back to Leah. By the way, I said calmly, I saw your BFF, Susie the Witch, in the ballroom earlier this evening. I was a bit surprised. With all the Beamers, Lexus and Benz I saw tonight, I'd thought for sure she'd be working the parking lot, looking for new customers. Theo snorted and tried to cover his smile as Leah shot him a quick glare. I turned and led Angie back into the ballroom. That witch, Angie hissed quietly as we danced. I can't believe her. Angie, I chuckled. Witches and 304s, oh my. A-hole, Angie said, snorting and laughing. Tease, I said, pulling her close as we danced. I felt her chuckle as she placed her head on my shoulder. Then she slowly made sure to press up against me with each opportunity during the dance. By the end, she was completely meshed against me, and there could no doubt she could feel me. As the dance ended, she stepped back, giggling. You were saying, she said, smiling from ear to ear. Actually, I was thinking of something before all the blood rushed. I take it you know Theo Hawthorne? Angie laughed. Tommy boy, I know several of the Hawthorns. I also know many of the Brafhams and Thorpes, and needless to say, I know almost all of the Rutherfords in the area. Eric made sure to meet and associate with all of Brownwood's blue bloods. I know a few from the Navarro and Collins families as well. Eric didn't pursue them as strongly since he felt they were too provincial. You do realize it was Priscilla Rutherford who Eric ran away with, don't you? I shook my head. Sorry, I didn't know who all was involved. Well, I am still on good terms with most of those families since the scandal only tarnished the Rutherford family, but I am sure the Rutherfords probably still refer to me as that stripper whose husband ran off with their gold-digging witch. Wow, I said softly. You never told me you were famous as well as gorgeous. She snorted and then laughed. Soon we were both silently grinning at each other. You know I'll want those back, she said, breaking the silence and patting my chest. But Angie, I whined. Can't I keep them, just for a little while longer? She raised her eyebrow and grinned. Reaching up again, she pulled me down into another kiss, not nearly as passionate as the first, but still very nice. I felt her hand on my chest right before she reclaimed my prize. She broke the kiss. With her one hand still gently caressing the back of my neck, she peered into my eyes. Hell no. She giggled. Angie? I asked awkwardly. She looked at me with concern. When exactly did you remove those? She grinned broadly. Actually, she said in her voice, I removed those earlier this evening. You know a girl has to be prepared. She chuckled when she saw my eyes grow huge. Relax, stud. I saw Leah and Susie within the first half hour we were here. Susie was hard to miss since she's dressed like a high-dollar hooker. I watched your ex-wife staring at you several times and knew that sooner or later she'd approach you. I wasn't sure how it would go, so I went to the ladies' room and prepared a little something to throw her off if it got confrontational. You succeeded. You think? She giggled. I stood there, silently smiling and staring at her. I was contemplating how something so small could be classified as a WMD, weapon of mass destruction. Angie saw my grin and guessed what it might have been related to. Clearing her throat, she got my attention. Private thought, or would you care to share why you're grinning like a big dumb animal? Oh, I was wondering if it's natural for a guy to be jealous of a tiny piece of clothing. Angie laughed. Tommy boy, I am not going to comment on your clothes fantasies. We both smiled as we returned to the dance floor. The rest of the evening was great. I got to hold and dance with the girl of my dreams. I felt like Cinderella when the ball came to a close. I know I was a little down as we got into the limo to go back to Angie's place. I was so wrapped up in my own disappointment that the evening was coming to a close that I'd missed the fact that Angie had been silent as well. When she spoke, it brought me out of my thoughts. Tommy boy, where do we go from here? Well, I thought first I'd take you home. Then you'd give me a goodnight kiss on the cheek. Then I'd grab one of your other cheeks. Then you'd slap the cheek you just kissed, the perfect ending to a perfect night. She barked out a little laugh. That's not what I meant, but just for the record, I don't slap since I am pretty decent at kickboxing. I meant what happens now that you've made your weight goal. I don't know, I said slowly. I'll probably cut down on the number of workouts, but we'll keep the eating regimen intact. It's just, she said, struggling to say whatever it was she wanted to tell me. I don't want you to stop. I really want you to push for those last 20 pounds to reach 100. Why? Tommy boy, she said in a tone resembling a mother explaining something to a small child. You are so much more than you realize. You have an incredible strength that you only seem to tap into on occasion. That 100-pound goal is more than just another 20 pounds. It's the beginning of a whole new life for you. I chuckled. Anyone ever tell you that you make a great cheerleader? Well, actually, I've got the outfit in my closet. Really? I said, instantly perking up. No, you perv. She snorted and laughed. I do have an outfit I am going to wear Saturday, but you'll have to agree to go with us to a Christmas party in the children's ward at the hospital." I stared at her silently. Erica and I dress like Santa's helpers for the party. Would I have to dress up? I said warily. "No, we already have a Santa, and I don't think I want to subject Erica or any of the children there to you dressed up like Rudolph with a red nose and antlers. It might emotionally scar them." "Ouch," I said, feigning being wounded. We chuckled to ourselves, trying to remove that mental image. "Tommy boy," she said, softly breaking the silence. "That goal seems to be unreachable to you in your mind, but I know you can do it. When you reach it, maybe you'll start to see there are things in this world you've written off as impossible that are really attainable. That'll make it a whole new world. Shouldn't we be on some magic carpet with a genie or something?" I said, laughing. "Damn," she said and laughed as well. "I've got to stop watching so many Disney movies." We both sat there and smiled, knowing Erica would never let it happen. "Seriously, Tommy boy, please consider it. Maybe we can think of something that would be a suitable incentive and reward." I snorted. "Not that," she said, chuckling then growing very silent. "A-hole. Tease." I escorted 2 Christmas elves into Sacred Heart Hospital Saturday morning for the children's Christmas party. The little one was the cutest elf ever. Okay, maybe I was a little prejudiced, but with her little green elf skirt, vest, and hat, along with her Christmas-decorated white tights and elf shoes, I thought she looked adorable. Her mom was dressed exactly like her. Oh my god. She wasn't dressed in some witchy costume, and she was completely covered, but there's something inherently wrong when a sexy, beautiful woman dresses like a child. I realized she was trying to be cute dressing like that, and wasn't trying to be overly sexy, but, oh my god. Every time I stared at her, my thoughts kept spiraling down a very Christmas fantasy path. I was afraid to look at her, much to her amusement. She knew she was still sexy, even if she wasn't trying to be. It had been an image she tried to mold herself into for years. She explained that the guy who played Santa every year only agreed to continue doing it if she continued to dress up and be his assistant. Dirty Santa. When we reached the children's ward, there had to be 40 or 50 people there. Only a dozen were patients. The rest were relatives and hospital staff. Erica skipped over to one of the little girls there and began talking. The orange-haired nurse came over to us. "Angie," Bree whispered, "we may have a little problem. Teddy came down sick last night and couldn't make it today. We'll need to find a replacement Santa. I'd usually ask my Zach to fill in, but he's out of town this weekend. As a last resort, I am sure one of the fathers would probably agree to do it." "That's okay," Angie said, grinning. "I'm sure we can find someone else to play Santa for a couple of hours." Both women turned and stared at me. The way they both smiled left me with no doubt I was the mouse this time. 10 minutes later, I was Santa. It wasn't too bad. The one-size-fits-all costume wasn't an issue. I even felt good having to use extra padding around the middle in order to fill it out. Then there were the kids. Damn, no kid should have to spend Christmas in the hospital. Most would agree, but that's not life, is it? I spent the next hour ho-ho-hoing and playing up to the kids, and then I made a mistake. I went to each child and asked them what they wanted for Christmas. I went to those who were bedridden first, and then I let those who could sit in my lap. Most of the kids almost shouted out their Christmas wishes while others had to whisper theirs in my ear. Damn, Santa isn't supposed to cry, but some of their wishes tore my heart out. I looked up at Angie and saw the same tears in her eyes. I faked being merry to the end and even gave out some small presents. Then I made my grand exit. When I got into a back room, I plopped down in a chair, emotionally drained. Angie and Bree had followed me and thanked me again and again. Angie told me there was still one more little girl who wanted to sit in Santa's lap. Ho, 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 little girl, I said, chuckling. Would you like to sit in Santa's lap and tell him what you want for Christmas? Of course, it only works if you've been very good or very bad. Angie chortled. In your dreams, Santa. Both women laughed. Ouch. I replied, much to their delight. Now, Angie said, smiling, I'll go get her. Angie? She knows it's me, right? She looked at me and smiled. Nope, I told her you were taking care of Santa's sleigh while he was here. She opened the door, then stopped and looked seductively over her shoulder at me. By the way, Santa, she cooed, I've been a very, very good girl this year. I groaned as Bree laughed. Moments later, Angie was back with Erica and several of the hospital staff. Erica hopped up in my lap and grinned at me. Hi, Santa. Remember me? She chirped. Oh, yes, I said in my Santa voice. I've been watching you very closely. Her eyes grew huge. Oh, yes, I continued. I always like watching good little girls. Erica smiled as I looked over at her mother and saw both Angie and Bree laughing and rolling their eyes. Erica then chattered for a couple of minutes before she grew very serious. Peering up at me, she asked if she could make her Christmas wish. I nodded. She crawled up and whispered in my ear, "Santa, what I want for Christmas is a real daddy." I choked as she sat back down in my lap. That stupid son of a witch. How could he abandon this precious little girl and her incredible mama? Damn, and I thought I could be stupid. "Oh, I forgot," she said, and crawled back up to whisper in my ear again. "And a pink bicycle. Well, we'll see what Santa can do about that last one," I said, chuckling. "That first one may take a little while. Santa will have to find someone very special for such a very good Goldilocks." She looked up at me, and her eyes grew big with recognition. "Santa Bear," she said, giggling. "Ho, ho, ho," I said loudly and then whispered back to her, "Don't tell anyone." She squealed, laughed, and then crawled down. "My turn," Angie said, grinning evilly. Erica went over and held Bree's hand as her mama walked over and sat firmly on my lap. There were several hoots and catcalls from our audience. I swear the only thing that crossed my mind right then was, "Damn, I hate this padding." "So, little girl, what do you want for Christmas?" I said loudly, trying to stay in character, much to the amusement of our audience. "Well," she drew out, then whispered in my ear, "I've got a proposition. I don't think Mrs. Claus would be okay with that." I said loudly. Our audience laughed again. Angie smiled and whispered in my ear again, "You make your 100 pounds, and I'll give you a lap dance you'll never forget." I couldn't stifle my loud groan. Our audience burst out laughing as Angie grinned triumphantly, got up, and sashayed back over to Bree. "All right, everyone," Bree said with a smile. "Now that Santa needs a cold shower, we need to get back to our patients." Bree looked at Angie and smiled. "Teddy's going to be very upset he wasn't playing Santa this year," Bree said, chuckling. "That'll teach the old perv." Angie laughed. I got dressed and met Angie and Erica out in the lobby. "Boy, Santa's sleigh sure was muddy," I said loudly. "It took me forever to clean it." "Save it, Santa Bear," Angie said, laughing. I looked over at Erica and we grinned at each other. Note to self, don't trust a 5-year-old to keep a secret. As we were leaving, I noticed the looks several guys were giving Angie. I grinned and Angie noticed. "Meet any new friends while you were waiting for me in the lobby?" I teased. "Humph," Angie snorted. "I think I'd 3 guys try to pick me up." I almost had to yell, "Stranger danger." As we drove back to her house, Angie grew quiet. I got them back home, and we ate lunch together after they'd changed. Erica finally went down for her nap, and I got to sit and talk with Angie. "So," she said, relaxing on her sofa, "did Erica ask for a pink bicycle?" I nodded. "Well, you're going to be a hero then. I already have it on layaway." We both smiled. "And what about her other wish?" Angie asked softly. "Sorry," I said, shaking my head. "Some secret Santa Bear really does keep." She looked at me and arched her eyebrow before smiling. "All right," she replied gently. "I won't pry too much." We talked for a while before we both fell silent again. "You know I was serious," she said softly. "I know." I sighed. "That's the problem. Wow, I can't remember having such an unenthusiastic response to one of my lap dances." "Sorry, it certainly isn't you." "Then what?" she said, sitting up and peering at me intently. "Angie, please," I said, struggling with my thoughts. "Tommy boy, talk to me. Don't shut me out. We're better friends than that." "That's the problem, Angie. We're friends." I stared at her, hoping she'd leave it alone. She didn't. "So what exactly is the problem?" "Damn it, Angie," I said softly. "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever met, and the idea of you giving me a lap dance makes me hyperventilate. But you need to realize something. The only reason I've been able to flirt and tease with you is because you've made it clear we're just friends. I accept that, but if you were to ever really turn your charm on towards me for real, I'd be lost. It would blur the lines for me, and I am not sure how I would react. I could easily embarrass both of us. Tommy boy, I've complete faith in you. You are a great guy and a great friend. I know that I'd be." "Stop right there, Angie," I growled. "You say the word safe and I swear I'll puke all over your living room." "Okay," she said with a sad smile. "I kind of understand, but you need to know why I even suggested such a thing to you. First off, I wanted to give you something very special, something I haven't given to anyone in a very long time. I am not a 304, but I wanted to give you something personal, something very sexual without actually having sex. I know you desire me. I won't tell you it's not flattering, because it is. Tommy boy, What about Daniel? She sat back and sighed. Daniel was exactly what I needed back then. He was perfect. He was kind and gentle. I knew he was trying to get me into bed, but he cared for me enough to keep our affairs out of the public spotlight. The fact he's handsome and very good in bed certainly helped as well. In many ways was like you, Tommy boy. He was safe. I knew he loved me, well as much as he was capable of love. I wasn't under any illusions. Daniel Pickering is a womanizer and a political animal. His only true love is himself and being in front of a camera. He's a true attention, 304. Since I knew what I was dealing with, I was comfortable with our friends with benefits arrangement. But you need to understand, Tommy boy, I never had to try to seduce him or tease him. Those were lost on him. He needed to always be in control or it became a power play or a game. That's not what I have with you. You allow me to be in control most of the time. You look out for me, and more importantly, for Erica. I never let Daniel around Erica. I didn't trust him that far. I didn't want to confuse the situation either. I do trust you. Tommy boy, you are an honorable man. I know you're just a man, but you're a good one. You don't want to hear it, but it's what makes you so special. A girl can be herself around you without always having to hide every emotion or every thought which wouldn't be considered appropriate. With you, a woman can be herself. That's very freeing and very desirable. Unfortunately, it also allows a woman's worst to come out as well, like your ex-wife's. I understand a lap dance may be too much, but a striptease where you can look but not touch might be possible. As long as you agree to the same rules found in most strip joints, I know I can make the night memorable. If something ever were to happen, all I have to say is stop, and I know you will. It might be difficult, but Tommy boy, I know you'd never hurt me. That's something very special to me, and I'd like to try and return the favor. I sat there struggling to gather my thoughts. So what do you think? She said softly. I think 100 pounds is going to be a witch to make. I sighed. I also think I'd be a world-class dumb shit to turn down the chance of seeing you strip. She beamed like a little girl who got her way and we laughed. This might be a very bad idea, I mumbled. The holidays can be an interesting time. Seeing all the lights and festivities can either breathe hope and excitement into someone or make them acutely aware of what's missing in their lives. For me, it was a mixed bag. I'd always enjoyed the romance and promise of family when I was with Leah. The first holiday I went through without her was during the divorce. Last year, the shock had worn off and I was extremely aware I was divorced. It was painful being alone. So I went home to Wisconsin and spent what little vacation I had with my family. This year I decided to forego traveling, and I let some of my crew off for the holidays. Armand had left to be with family back in New York City, and Jonas took a week off to be with his family down in the city. That left me watching the sheep. Excuse me, networks, we monitored and maintained. It wasn't terrible, but I found myself thinking about Angie and Erica all the time. Reluctantly, Angie had gone back to Dallas for Christmas. I could tell whatever happened in the past still made her hesitant to go home. I guess I was expecting her to open up and tell me about it, but she hadn't. I'd hoped she'd confide in me since I was her friend. Of course, I wanted more. The Christmas ball and our conversation after the children's Christmas party was still in my mind. Okay, and in my dreams as well. I found myself missing them. I wondered what they were doing and if they were okay. Alright, I'm not stupid. I knew I was falling in love. I already loved the little munchkin, but I was sliding down the unenviable slope of falling for a fantasy. Besides being a romantic fool, I am also a realist, and knew I was the one who was going to get hurt by all this. I knew being her friend was the best I could ever hope for, but maybe friends with benefits wasn't too much of a fantasy. I thought I could live with it since it would allow me to be a big part of their lives. Since she'd offered me a lap dance as motivation, I figured she didn't find me too repulsive. That motivation, by the way, was working overtime, since I was working out at least 5 times a week to keep the holiday pounds away. It made the time away from the Miles girls more bearable until I could see them New Year's Eve. There was one surprise during the holidays. It occurred a couple days before Christmas. Leah called and asked if she could come over. I hesitated until she said she only wanted to apologize for the Christmas ball and wouldn't stay long. Maybe it was the holiday spirit, or maybe I drank some bad eggnog, but I agreed. When I opened the door, I was taken aback. Leah had obviously made herself up to show off her strengths and to hide her weaknesses. Even with the added weight, she still looked good. I felt excited as I'd always found her sexy, but realizing I still had some old feelings for my ex-wife buried somewhere in my heart was disconcerting. Thank you for meeting with me, Tommy boy, she said gently. Our last meeting didn't go very well. Sorry, you surprised me. I know and I am sorry. There were some things I'd wanted to say, but we didn't get off on the right foot. Leah, I said calmly, we didn't end on a good note. So what made you think we'd start off on one? She didn't say anything, so I stepped out of the doorway and let her in. She gave me an unsure smile as she looked around the apartment. There were still several things from our old apartment which I hadn't gotten around to replacing. Some of this looks familiar, she said softly. Well, I couldn't afford to replace all of it at first. By the time I could, I figured it would be money better spent putting down on a house or new furnishings. Still holding on to the dream of owning a house? She asked with a touch of sadness. Of course, I said coldly. You didn't steal all my dreams. I could see the pain on her face as she gathered her composure. I am so very sorry for that, Tommy boy. More than you'll ever know. All right, Leah. I sighed. What do you want? It's the holidays and I wanted to clear the air between us. It's been 2 years since the divorce, so clearing the air is pretty irrelevant. I've been working on moving on with my life, and you'd moved on before we even filed for divorce. Yes, I know. I acted like a witch back then. I wish I could change that, but I can't. I also know you've moved on as well. I heard about your run-in with Susie and the young woman you were with. And then, of course, there was the beautiful blonde that was on your arm at the ball. So, Leah sighed. It didn't turn out that way, but I was trying to give you a compliment. I wanted to tell you that you were looking very handsome, and I was more than a little jealous of your date. There were several snide comments which came to mind, but I held my tongue. Your comments were cold, not that I didn't deserve them, but they were still cruel. To let you know, I haven't been out with Susie in over a year. What? Trouble in paradise? Leah's face dropped. Yes, she said softly, you could say that. It'd be more accurate to say I finally pulled my head out of my shit. Again, I surprised myself by not saying anything. Even more shocking was my thought that Angie would be proud of me. Before I could begin self-analyzing those thoughts, Leah continued. Tommy boy, I am sorry. I can't tell you how much I regret letting myself get led away from you and ruining our marriage. I know it wasn't perfect, but at least you were trying, while I just quit. I got caught up in Susie's world and followed her down that path. It took some hard knocks to bring me back to my senses. Leah, I don't want to hear about your wild sex life. Okay, so I couldn't help myself. It was a cheap comment, but what the hell? She deserved it. What? No, that's not what I meant. I was talking about something that made me wake up and see what I'd become. We're divorced. You don't have to tell me. I'm sorry, but I believe I do. Of all the people my selfishness hurt, I caused you the most pain. Actually, as bad as I may have hurt you, it was me my actions damaged the most, even if I didn't realize it back then. I need to tell you that you were right about a lot of things. You were right about what my friendship with Susie was doing to me, to us, and our marriage. I wish I would have seen it back then. You didn't go blindly, Leah. You knew what was happening and where it was leading. Yes, you're right. I followed her with my eyes open. For a short time, I was wrapped up in the thrill of the lifestyle, but it didn't last long. I kept getting deeper and deeper until it all came crashing down about 6 months after our divorce was final. After one horrible weekend, my fantasy world crumbled. You remember Theo Hawthorne, my date at the Christmas ball? I nodded. Susie had begun dating his older cousin, Bryce Hawthorne. They were at the Christmas ball together. I am sure you saw them. She read my reaction. Yes, he's about 20 years older than her. He's also the proprietor out at the Four Seasons Lodge and rich. Needless to say, Susie thinks she's found a sugar daddy. But this sugar daddy has a vicious sweet tooth. He's really into the swinger scene, which isn't bad, but he's also into some other, much darker scenes as well. One of those areas is, he convinced Susie to be the entertainment for a group of his friends from time to time. She tried to get me to join her for one of those weekends. I'll forever be ashamed I let her talk me into it once. After 2 days of doing things I would have never imagined I'd ever do, I looked at myself in the mirror. What I saw disgusted me. I saw a woman who chased after the sexual thrill of being used at the cost of the things she once held dear. I was devastated. Not only had I thrown away my marriage, but I'd lost all my self-respect as well. I can't tell you how embarrassed and ashamed I was when I started talking to my family and those of our friends who would still talk to me. They all let me know what they thought and reminded me of how badly I treated you. I know it's far too late, but I wanted to tell you I am sorry. I am sorry I did this to us. I am sorry I destroyed our dreams together. You may not want to hear this, but I still care very much for you. So what about Theo? I said in a voice calmer than I really was. Leah smiled weakly. Theo and I started dating shortly after that weekend. I was a mess and he'd heard about the from Bryce. He checked on me a couple of times to make sure I was all right. Even though he's about 10 years older than me, he's no sugar daddy. We've been dating off and on for about a year, but nothing exclusive. Leah snorted a disgusted laugh and continued. Theo and his firm own the city lights and the strobe. It's hard to be exclusive with someone who continuously has girls throwing their drunken bodies at them. Yeah, I said, damn difficult to have a committed relationship with someone who's open to a little strange on the side from time to time. Leah's face sank, and she looked like she was about to cry. Don't think I don't see the irony in this, she said weakly. Right now I am simply trying to put the pieces of my life back together. I know what I did and what I lost. Tommy boy, I am afraid I'll always love you. I know we'll never be together again, but I wanted you to know. Well, thank you for your apology, and you're right. We'll never be together again. Although it shouldn't surprise you, since it was you who tried to destroy me. You threw me and the love I had for you away like it was trash. So no, we'll never be a couple again. Actually, the thought of ever getting back together with you makes me want to puke. Besides, I said, calming myself, I am finally starting to move on and seem to be doing all right. Is it that beautiful blonde you were with at the ball? Angie? I chuckled. No, we're only friends. Friends with benefits? I glared at my ex-wife. None of your damn business. I am sorry. I am sorry. It's only after seeing that kiss she gave you, and with her giving you her little thong. I am sorry, Tommy boy, but I could never compete with someone like her. Even Susie would have been. You're wrong, I interrupted. Neither one of you could ever compare with Angie, and it's not because she's so damn gorgeous. It's because she has something neither of you have, character. She's no saint, but she'd never betray someone she claimed to love like that. She'd divorce his, but before she'd ever cheat on him. Even with that, Leah, even before you tore my heart out, you could have more than competed with someone like Angie. Hell, you would have won every time. Yeah, right, Leah snorted. Leah, until I met Angie, most people would have said Susie was the hottest woman I'd ever known. They would have been wrong. From the moment you told me you loved me, no one could have compared to you. I never once made a pass or flirted with Susie after we became a couple. You were the sexiest and most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. At least in my eyes you were. But you, I growled, were always more worried about what others thought than the guy who loved and married you. You let some skanky which tell you our love wasn't worth fighting for, that it was your right to step out and get a little on the side. Regardless of whatever shit she or anyone else was putting in your head, in the end it was you who gave up on us. It was you and your supposed love for me that wasn't strong enough to keep you from lying and cheating on me. That's the same love which caused you to give up and go find some strange without ever fighting for our marriage. It was your love that wouldn't protect us, protect me. So you telling me you still love me doesn't mean shit, I said, trying to calm and control my breathing. Your kind of love I can do without. I know, she whispered with tears streaming down her face. I guess I'm sorry, I continued, but I am not really sure what you expected or hoped for with this visit. I'd wish you a good life, but it would be a lie. My Christmas wish is I hope not to ever think of you again. Thankfully, I'm getting there. As for Susie, I hope that nasty witch dies of AIDS or some other horrible disease. Leah stood up and quietly walked to the door. She opened it and stopped. Even though she wasn't facing me, I could see her shoulders shake as she sobbed. I'm sorry, Tommy boy. I know it doesn't mean much now, but I truly am. I hope you find someone who'll love you like you once loved me. I started to say something, but the only thing I could think of was Merry Christmas or Happy Holiday, and those seemed pretty hypocritical. Silently, I watched my ex-wife leave. Maybe it was my guilt over how I acted with Leah, or maybe I was missing Angie and Erica so much, but I ended up in a Santa suit back at Sacred Heart on Christmas Day. With all the confusing emotions swirling around in my head, I needed a dose of reality and I got it. There's something about being around others who are having a tougher time of it to give you some perspective on your own problems. Seeing some of the things these kids and their families were going through made my issues seem small. It didn't mean the frustration, bitterness, and pain surrounding my divorce wasn't important. It simply put it in perspective. It wasn't as overwhelming. My feelings for Angie and Erica were also exposed. If I didn't get to have the kind of relationship with them that I wanted, it wouldn't devastate me. It would be disappointing and would hurt, but I'd survive. Watching a little girl waiting for a kidney transplant, or looking into the eyes of a father whose little boy has cancer will do that to you. It was with that serenity that I welcomed Angie and Erica back to Brownwood on New Year's Eve. Unfortunately, my serenity only lasted until midnight. Angie had returned from Dallas stressed and upset, but had begun to relax as the night went on. We'd gathered at Mrs. Harper's home just down the block from Angie's house. There were several people from the neighborhood whom Angie considered friends, as well as neighbors. Surprisingly, there wasn't anyone from the gym. Angie seemed to keep her personal and professional lives very separate. I was surprised to see Erica still awake as midnight approached until Angie let me in on Erica's secret. She said Erica had gladly taken a longer nap that afternoon so she could bring in the new year with me. As we started the countdown, Erica made sure I was holding her. At midnight, we all yelled out together, "Happy New Year." Erica leaned over and kissed her mama and then kissed me on the cheek. "Now you gotta kiss me," she said, giggling. I made a big production of kissing her on her forehead as she squealed, "Now you gotta kiss mama." "I don't know, Goldilocks," I said, laughing. "You never know what could happen when a princess kisses an ogre." "Tommy Bear, that only happens with frogs," she squealed. "But it never happens. My friend Molly's mama said she's kissed a whole bunch of frogs, but all she got was warts." I almost choked laughing. Angie laughed at first before Mama Bear came out. "Maybe we shouldn't hang around Molly's mama for a while," Angie said sternly. "Okay, Mommy," the munchkin replied. "Now are you gonna kiss Tommy Bear?" Angie leaned over and gave me a quick kiss. It seemed to satisfy Erica, but not our audience. Mrs. Harper grinned as she took Erica from my arms. "Time for little ones to go lay down," she announced and turned to go tuck Erica in one of the back bedrooms. "Give him a real kiss," she whispered to Angie as she left. Angie turned and looked up at me with her blue eyes. I saw a flash of mischief in them before she stepped closer to me. "Well," she cooed as she draped her arms around my neck. "I'm not really sure who kissed who that time. The night of the Christmas ball, she'd kissed me, and I'd naturally responded. This time it was like we were a couple for a brief moment, both of us striving to mesh ourselves together as our tongues explored and entwined with each other. When we broke apart, there was a definite heat surrounding us, much to the delight of her friends and neighbors. "Shit," she whispered. "Tommy boy, you need to make weight and soon." Like most people, I threw myself into the gym right after the holidays. While most people were trying to get past their guilt and get in better shape, my motivations were less honorable. That New Year's Eve kiss had me focused on dropping those last 12 pounds. It also had my fantasies operating in overdrive. I'd one false start in January. I told Angie I'd reached my weight. She promptly informed me cutting water weight didn't count. We had a nice night out. I'd asked Erica to be my Valentine, and her response was typical Erica. She giggled. "Tommy Bear, you're silly. I am already your Valentine." There really wasn't anything to say to that, was there? After I took them home, I cornered Angie before I left and smiled. "I made weight 2 days ago," I said, grinning. "About damn time," she hissed and laughed. "I'll see you later on tonight. I'll be over after Erica goes to bed, and Mrs. Harper can come over." I stared at her in surprise. "I've had Mrs. Harper on call for the past 2 weeks," she said, grinning. After saying my good nights, I think I floated with anticipation all the way back to my apartment. The next 90 minutes seemed like at least 3 hours. Finally, I heard a knock at my door. My fantasy had arrived. She walked in carrying a large tote bag. I started to say something, but she gently put her finger on my lips and slowly shook her head. "The less you speak," she said in a low, husky voice, "the better this'll go. Trust me." I nodded. "Good. Now go find a chair you can sit in and get comfortable." "Oh, I almost forgot." She handed me a CD and grinned evilly. "Be a sweetheart and put this in the stereo? I'll tell you when to start it." She literally skipped to my bathroom and shut the door behind her. I tried to fight back the anticipation, but I could feel my heart racing as I made myself comfortable in an easy chair. Several minutes later, I heard a sweet voice call out from the bathroom and tell me to start the music. I was a little taken back when I heard the pulsating beat of Hailstorms. I Get Off, Fill the Room. "You don't know that I know," Lazzie Hale soulfully panted. "You watch me every night." My entire living room faded into the background as Angie strutted out. She was dressed in a blue and silver cheerleading outfit, complete with tight sweater top, short skirt. She had her hair pulled back into a golden ponytail with a big blue ribbon and looked every part the cheerleader fantasy. Her big sweet smile let me know she knew she rocked the look. "Angie," I said, my voice shaking. "Tommy boy," she whispered and said, "that was your reward for all the hard work and dedication you've shown this last year. Not only for losing the weight, but for your dedication to Erica and me. I know you've been pushed past the point where if you were to touch me, you wouldn't be able to stop. You've shown you'll honor your promise not to take from me what I won't give you. You continue to surprise me, Tommy boy." "I can't," I hissed. "No," she hissed back. "You can't, but I can. This isn't me rewarding you. This is for me." I believe I had a brief glimpse into that experience. I was overwhelmed by the realization that tomorrow would shine on a very different relationship between Angie and me, and it terrified me. She leaned forward and devoured my lips with her kiss. She looked down at me with a questioning look. Since before the Christmas ball, I continued. Afterwards, I couldn't focus on anyone but you. She smiled warmly. Me too. Now it was my turn to be surprised. What, no Daniel? I said, instantly regretting my words. She peered down at me with a mixture of emotions dancing in her eyes. No Daniel. Not since before I bought my dress for the Christmas ball. That's probably why he acted like a shit that night. Even though we weren't a couple, he still can be possessive at times. The thought of taking off my clothes for you these past 2 months has been very exciting, probably more exciting than I'd originally expected. When we kissed New Year's Eve, I knew I was going to go farther than only stripping. That knowledge, that anticipation, has had me on edge more than I've been in a very long time. Tommy boy, I'm sorry I blurred the lines between us. Well, she snorted softly and grinned. I am kind of sorry. So, I said softly as I tried to gather my thoughts. All night? Angie barked out a laugh and then covered her mouth. Erica is at Mrs. Harper's tonight, she said softly and nodded. We've got some time. Good. I grunted as I struggled to stand with Angie still wrapped around me like a python. We both laughed as I frog walked us to my bedroom. Arriving at my bed, I turned on a bedside lamp and began unwrapping Angie, much to her amusement, before dropping her onto my bed. She lay there on her back and stared up at me with a smirk. What? She said coyly. You are the most incredible person I've ever met, I said softly. It's the most incredible present I've ever received. We had wild and passionate sex. Once we were done, we collapsed into each other's arms. Tommy boy, she whispered in a small little voice. I thought at first she was teasing and she was going to say something playful or silly. Instead, she asked something which stunned me. Was it everything you'd hoped it would be? I wanted to yell and ask her if that was a joke. How could she not know she'd given me the best night of my life? How could someone so beautiful, so disciplined and strong be that insecure? Then I had an epiphany. I didn't know this woman lying beside me as well as I'd thought I did. Even though she'd let me into her life and I knew her better than most, I still made stereotypical assumptions based on her looks, her words, and her actions. She was vulnerable. I thought for a moment on how to reply. I could tell her how wonderful tonight had been and try to soothe any fears or doubts she had, or I could tell her the truth, the whole truth. Doing that would leave me very exposed. But then she'd allowed herself to be vulnerable in front of me, so I had to hope she wouldn't destroy me with her reaction. Damn, I surmised. I am standing at the edge of the abyss again. Yes and no, I replied softly and felt her stiffen. Angie, I sighed. Yes, it was everything I'd ever fantasized about and more. Having sex with the girl of your dreams is something few men ever get the opportunity to experience, but it's not at the top of my bucket list. Now I am scared to hear what's at the top of your list, she said, trying to hide her discomfort with teasing. What is it? It's making love to the woman of my dreams. Angie became eerily quiet. It took her a few seconds before I felt her breathe again. Tommy, she started. Relax, Angie, I replied gently. I am not asking you to feel something you don't. I know you don't feel the same way I do. It's disappointing, but understandable. At the top of my list is to make love to the love of my life. She'll be my dream girl regardless of what others may or may not think of her. The sex will, of course, be good because it'll be between two lovers, but it'll be so much more than that. I hope to be able to give her everything I am, and she'll desire to give me all of herself as well. I thought I had that with Leah, but I was wrong. It turned into a one-way love, and those, sooner or later, burn out. Angie, I want to thank you for the gift you gave me tonight. It was incredible, partly because you're so damn beautiful, but also because you care for me, at least as a friend. I know you tried to make tonight very special, and you succeeded. But, I said softly, even though you gave me your body, you detached emotionally at times. Please understand I am certainly not complaining, but I wanted you to know I noticed it. Angie, I've never been able to separate sex and love. Almost every woman I've ever had sex with, I've had some feelings for. I was never like Leah. I couldn't simply go out and screw somebody. I tried that back in college, but it always ended badly. Most of the time, we both left feeling cheap and unfulfilled. So you had feelings for Tara? Angie said softly. Of course, I replied. You knew I would. That's why you sent her to me. You knew after I'd met her I couldn't hurt her. You knew I was safe. Yes, I could hear the smile in her voice. And you were the great guy I'd hoped you'd be. Tommy, you've no idea how much you helped Tara regain her self-esteem. We laid there quietly for several minutes before she broke the silence with a small whisper. So you have feelings for me? Please, Angie, I whispered in her ear as I pulled her tight. You've got to know I love you more than just as a friend. I know, you think I am only in love with your body, but you're wrong. I love so much more of you than that. She was still for several seconds before I felt her stifle a small sob. You don't know me, Tommy boy, she whispered. If you did, you wouldn't think of me as some kind of dream girl. We were silent as we lay in each other's arms. I wasn't sure how to proceed without stepping into an emotional minefield. Did you know I've been married twice? She said softly. No, I replied gently. I didn't. The first was when I lived in Dallas. Is that why Dallas is so hard to return to? She rolled over and peered into my eyes. Slowly she nodded and I saw her eyes begin to water. Yes, it's painful to go back home and see the disappointed looks and even sneers from those you called friends. What's worse is some of it still comes from some of my family as well. She wiped away a stray tear and took a deep breath. We started dating when we were seniors in high school. I was a cheerleader and had recently broken up with our star halfback. Jimmy had been dating a girl who'd moved away that summer. Even against our parents' wishes, we got married right after graduation. Hell, we were 18 and adults, or so we thought. Jimmy landed a full-time job at a local plant, and I was going to school and working part-time as a waitress. Jimmy didn't have the grades to go to college, but I'd received a partial athletic scholarship to play volleyball at the University of Texas at Arlington. That first year we were poor, but happy, and then I got injured during the spring. We were out with another couple and had been partying when we were in a car accident. Everyone came out of it okay but me. I twisted my back. It was bad enough that it not only ended my volleyball career, but also put me out of commission for about a month. In the end, I lost both my job and scholarship. To make up for the lost revenue and stay in college, I started stripping. I'd always been a bit of an exhibitionist, but this was a new experience. Jimmy didn't mind, at least at first. After several months, though, it began to eat away at him. Then he got laid off, and everything went to hell. He started drinking more, and his supposed friends who he hung out with made it worse. They'd constantly tease him about my stripping. A couple of them would even show up and try to pay for a lap dance. Needless to say, things at home were tense. Our fights typically followed the same old pattern. He'd make some sarcastic accusation, I'd deny it and scream at him. He'd tell me to quit stripping and I'd tell him I would as soon as he could support us. It was a toxic cycle. It didn't take long before he started becoming secretive about his whereabouts. I'd heard he'd been sniffing around his ex-girlfriend who was back in town, the one who'd moved away the summer before we'd started dating. When I confronted him, he denied it. One night I left work early and went looking for him. I found his car in her driveway with the house dimly lit. The next morning, I asked him where he'd been last night. He told me he'd gone out with some friends. I'd like to say I handled it better, but I didn't. It didn't take much to find someone to get my revenge with. To make things worse and hurt Jimmy even more, I decided to have a one-night stand with one of his slimy friends. Until my dying day, I'll regret doing that. I knew it would get back to my husband, and it did. The fight was ugly. It was then I found out he'd been going over to his ex-girlfriend's house, but not to have sex. I learned the reason she moved back in high school was because her parents found out she was pregnant. She was supposed to have gotten an abortion, but changed her mind and didn't. She never told Jimmy she hadn't gone through with it. So Jimmy learned he was a daddy and had a son. The reason the house was dim was because Jimmy was going over and rocking his son to sleep. He said he'd been afraid to tell me about it since our marriage was already in trouble. I was angry at him for his lies, but I was devastated at my cheating. Between my cheating and his secrets, our marriage crumbled. I begged for his forgiveness, but my desire to hurt him with my revenge sex had been too much. It was a month before our 2-year anniversary that the divorce was final. I was a 20-year-old, cheating, stripper ex-wife. Not the dream of most little girls growing up. I was alone and struggling and hated myself. That's when I met Eric. He was managing the gym where I'd started going. I guess karma really is a witch, isn't it? I shit all over my first marriage, and then Eric shit all over my second one. But in the end, it always comes down to this: once a cheater, always a cheater, right? She whispered. How can anyone love that? She rolled back over, and I held her tightly as she cried. After several minutes, she grew quiet, and I thought she might have fallen asleep. I fought the tears I had in my eyes after listening to her pain and her self-judgment. I gently kissed the back of her neck. Damn, Angie, I wish you could see yourself through my eyes. Her response surprised me and changed the way I saw this woman. How do you see me? She said it so softly I almost missed the fear and uncertainty in her voice. It was then I realized she believed she already knew what I saw. I was like every other man she'd gone to bed with in that they desired what they saw and their desire blinded them to seeing deeper. She'd simply accepted this was just the way it was always going to be. My heart broke as I began to see how her beauty had been both a blessing and a curse to her. I wish I was a poet so I'd be able to say what I want to in a way you'd like. But I am not. What I am is some lucky fool who's lying in bed holding the most beautiful creature he's ever met. I won't tell you I love you because I doubt you'd believe me. You'd probably think I was confusing love with lust, and you'd be partially right. There's no doubt I desire you. But it's much more than that. What I see, Angie, is an incredible woman. Unfortunately, she has a difficult time believing it. Actually, she knows it's true, but she's convinced herself no guy will ever be able to see beyond her stunning looks. She'd be wrong. I won't deny I love the way you look and I loved the feeling of you wrapped around me. I'll always remember tonight. From your incredible kisses. I also love the way your eyes sparkle when you talk about Erica, or the gym, or anything else you're proud of. I love the sound of your laugh. It brings a smile to my face, no matter how shitty my day has been. I am continuously impressed as I watch you deal with all of the different personalities at the gym. Angie, I see an intelligent and very savvy businesswoman who is hard as nails on the outside, but is an incredibly sensitive woman in private. She's a mama bear, fierce in her defense of her child and of those she cares for, and can be selfless in providing for their needs. She's also afraid. Having to be strong all the time is killing her. She's concerned that if she allows someone into her life he could hurt her, or worse, hurt Erica. That fear leaves her feeling alone, isolated against the world. What has to be frustrating is she knows her love, desire, and passion would overwhelm the man she falls in love with. If he'd allow her, she'd be his world with Erica being their moon. She'd be a gift to him that was more valuable than anything he could ever imagine. I felt her hand cover mine as she pressed it softly to her cheek. I could feel the moisture from her tears. "Angel," I said as I gently brushed back a strand of golden hair and kissed her ear, "you really are a remarkable woman. Thank you for giving me this night. I'll remember it for the rest of my life." She reached for my hand and placed it between her hands. I held her tight until we both fell asleep, my angel in my arms. I could feel the dampness of her tears as they dripped onto my chest. Perhaps their coupling had reminded her of something sad or bad from her past. Worse, she might be crying because he's disappointed her, or she regrets having given herself to him. All in all, it's a reaction which baffles most men, since they simply don't know what to do next. Should they comfort or apologize? Those were my thoughts until Angie reached up and stroked the side of my face gently. She smiled weakly at my concern. "Thank you, Tommy boy," she cooed. "I haven't let myself go like that in a very, very long time." She nuzzled back into my chest as I wrapped my arms around her. Soon I could hear her heavy breathing as she slept in my embrace. Damn, I thought to myself, maybe being so pathetically safe isn't such a bad thing. I'm not sure how quickly I fell asleep, but when I woke up the next morning, she was gone. I knew things would be different, but I wasn't sure how much. It didn't take long to figure it out. The next several days were beyond awkward. I tried to talk to Angie several times, but she stonewalled me. When we finally did talk, it was obvious all her defenses were up. I thanked her again for that night, but told her I wouldn't bring it up again. She looked relieved. I got to see her and Erica a couple of times over the next 2 weeks, and it appeared things had gone back to the way our relationship had been before the 4th of July. I won't say I was happy about it, but it wasn't completely unexpected either. I resigned myself to the fact this was how things between Angie and I would be, friends, but that was all. That night was special, but she could have her choice of most men. Why would she pick me? I'd already chastised myself several times, reminding myself I knew I was the one who'd get hurt if we went too far. It didn't help. Several weeks passed, then something changed. I had a knock at my door. Opening it, I was surprised to see a visibly upset Angie. She'd obviously been crying, so I quickly ushered her in. "Angie, what's wrong? Is Erica okay?" "What? No, she's fine," Angie replied quickly. "Tommy boy, I need to ask a favor. You know I'll try to help if I can." She looked very uncomfortable, and it was obvious she was struggling with something. "Tommy boy, I know this is unfair of me to ask," she said softly, "but would you hold me tonight?" "Angie, just hold me as a friend," she interrupted, and looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Please." A beautiful woman crying and asking to be held? Of course I gave in. I took her over to the couch and held her. She buried her head into my chest and cried. I wrapped my arms around her and gently stroked her hair until she settled down. "Now," I said gently, "you want to tell me what this is all about?" She was silent for a minute before she turned her head and laid it on my chest again. "Eric called," she whispered. I quietly let her gather her thoughts. She shuddered, then continued. "He said he was moving back to Brownwood and wanted to be a part of Erica's life again. That son of a witch bails on us for 3 years, and now he wants to be a part of her life? Bullshit." She buried her face in my chest and wept. I stroked her hair for several minutes until she calmed down. "You could always talk to a lawyer," I said gently. "I can't do that," she mumbled, shaking her head. "I could never stop a parent from trying to be a part of their child's life unless they were an addict or physically dangerous. I wouldn't do that simply because the parent was a selfish a-hole. No, Eric knows I won't keep him completely away from Erica. I'll bet he even planned on it. He knows I'll protect her, but I won't stop him from trying to be her father. I couldn't do that to Erica. I couldn't stand to face her when she's older and asks me why I kept her father away. Damn it," she cried. "It's so unfair. Why did he have to come back now that things were changing? How are things changing?" I asked, softly, hoping against hope I was a part of that change. She sat back and looked up into my eyes. "I'm sorry, Angie, but I am not sure what our relationship is exactly right now." She sighed and nodded. "I know, and I am sorry I've been such a cold fish lately. That night was more than I'd expected. I knew the first time we had sex in the living room. The other times right after were fun and very fulfilling as well. Truthfully, though, I expected it would be. It was the intimacy afterwards, and that I would tell you those things that surprised me. Tommy boy, other than Eric, Mrs. Harper is the only person I've ever spoken to about my past here in Brownwood. That night I felt so at peace, so safe, that I shared those things. Then when I woke you up, Angie surprised me when she actually blushed slightly. She stared into my eyes, and I could see the hurricane of emotions swirling in them. That was something I hadn't done in a long time. Not since the first year with Jimmy. To be honest, Tommy boy, it scared the hell out of me. I knew I was blurring the lines, but I didn't realize how badly. You said you didn't know what our relationship was now. I wish I could tell you, but I don't know either. I know I love you as a friend, but could we try being friends with benefits? I am not sure you could handle it without wanting more. To be honest, I am not sure I could handle it either. That night changed things, but I don't know exactly how just yet. Then Eric calls and all those emotions are added to our current mess. I don't know all the feelings I have towards Eric now. I obviously loved him, since I married him, but he shit on Erica and me, and now those feelings have changed. I am scared, Tommy boy. What if when I see him I find out that I still care for him? How do I deal with that, since he abandoned us once before? I am sorry, Tommy boy. I am an emotional basket case. I am trying to be strong and protect Erica and myself, but I am failing. I need a place to think, a place where I feel protected. I know it's unfair to you, asking you to fill that role without knowing where you stand. I am ashamed, but that's where I am right now. I looked at her and sighed softly. I opened my arms and she flew back into them. I held her as she softly cried. I swallowed my thoughts of how good she felt in my arms. I fought back my desire to love this woman with everything I had. I fought to be safe. It was bound to happen sooner or later. Brownwood isn't that big, and I still want to MS fit 3 or 4 times a week. It wasn't a surprise when I ran into Eric at the gym. What did surprise me was his appearance. Damn, he looked like a Greek god. If I'd been insecure about being with Angie before, now I was doubly so. How could I have believed I could compete with guys like Daniel Pickering or this walking romance novel cover? If they weren't rich and powerful, they were damn male models. Reality has a way of raining on our dreams, and I was experiencing a downpour. That's my excuse for acting like a shit. My other excuse was that Eric Miles just seemed to bring that particular trait out in me. He was standing over by the free weights with an audience. There were several guys around him, with more than a few women looking longingly over at them, fantasizing. The pheromone level in the room was off the scale. I recognized a couple of guys, and immediately knew I should head in the other direction. I saw Rob Sutherland and Marcus Dixon standing there laughing at something Eric had said. I hadn't seen them at the gym before, but I'd heard they'd been regulars when Eric was there last. I guess his return must have sparked their interest in MS Fit again. I knew the very day Eric arrived back in Brownwood. Angie was over at my apartment that very evening and in my arms. Her ex-husband's return had really shaken her. Her usual hard-shelled demeanor had been replaced by a surprisingly scared young woman. Over the next few weeks, Eric had spent some time with Erica. Angie said it was obvious Eric had ulterior motives besides becoming a part of his daughter's life again. She said he'd been very contrite and apologetic for his actions. He asked her to forgive him every time he came over to be with Erica. One evening while I was holding Angie, I asked her if she was considering going back to him. She thought for a moment before replying no, but she'd been surprised by the feelings she still had for him. After my encounter with Leah last Christmas, I could easily relate. I basically held her and reassured her everything would be okay. I was a friend, a port in the storm, a refuge where she could go and feel safe. In some ways, I was honored, but in others, it was sheer torture. I held a beautiful woman, but couldn't kiss or caress her without destroying her sanctuary. In short, it sucked. It was that emotional whirlwind that was going on in my head when I heard the voice. Tommy boy. Shit. Brandon. Tommy boy, come over here. I turned and saw the grinning face of my friend. We'd never been really close after the Angie episode, but we'd remained friends. His smile was genuine since he had no idea Sutherland and Dixon had probably played a part in the failure of my marriage. I walked over to them and noticed very different reactions on each of their faces. Rob had a smug, sarcastic grin, while Marcus coolly stared at me, making sure I wasn't a threat. Eric had a condescending smirk as he sized me up. I fought to control my thoughts as I sensed a probable confrontation. Hey, Tommy boy, Brandon chattered. This is Eric Miles. He used to own a mess fit. Yeah, I said calmly, so I've heard. So you're the infamous Tommy Bear my daughter can't stop talking about. She's a special little girl, I replied. Yes, she is, he said grinning. She comes from good stock. Yeah, Angie is pretty special as well. Well, yes, he laughed. But I was talking about her daddy. Oh, the broodmare is important, but it's the stud that makes a winner. His macho response got a smattering of chuckles. I could tell he saw he'd struck a nerve with me when he grinned evilly. I felt that old controlled rage creeping up the back of my skull. I knew any altercation would not end well for me. Even if I won the battle, I'd lose the war. Any arrest and conviction would kill my employment at SNS. Besides the bad PR, they tended not to let felons around the security-sensitive data of some of our customers. Shit. I thought to myself, I am headed for the edge of the abyss again, but this time I've got little to gain since it would cause a bad situation for Angie to get worse. I am surprised though, he continued. I thought you'd be, I don't know, bigger, hairier, and more scary, not some big fluffy teddy bear. What can I say? I am not into scaring and breaking little girls' hearts. I'll say you're not what I expected either. I expected someone more slimy. Someone everyone could easily look at and know was a piece of shit who abandoned his wife and baby daughter to chase after some old rich piece of shit. Okay, so maybe I needed to work on my tact. At least I didn't have to beg her to screw me by promising to lose my fat butt. I heard about your arrangement. Pretty damn pathetic. Well, you must have heard wrong. The only reward I got for losing all the weight was to get to hold your ex-wife as we danced at the Christmas ball. But I'll admit the kiss goodnight was worth it. Shit, what a loser, he sneered. You could have been screwing her if you'd played your cards better. Screw the abyss. I hit the arrogant prick right in the stomach. He dropped to his knees, gasping for air. I reached down and grabbed a handful of his black curly hair. With a hard yank, I had his head bent back and his face looking right up into mine. Listen up, moron, I hissed. One more shitty comment about Angie, in her own place, and I'll truly screw you up. Understand me, princess? Black belt, he wheezed. I'll kick. Maybe a hole, I sneered as I pulled harder on his hair, causing his eyes to water. But I'll guarantee you I'll screw up your pretty face so bad you'll have to go find some half-blind hooker to get screwed again. He stared silently up at me with hatred in his watering eyes. There was an eerie second of silence, like the one that occurs right after a flash of lightning and the following thunder. Ah, screw it, I said, and drew back to hit Eric in the face. His eyes grew large as he saw it coming. Tommy boy, Brandon yelled out. Be cool, man. I turned and looked at him. The expression on my face made him take a step back. Holy shit, Tommy boy, Brandon said, forcing a laugh. You got PMS, or are you still trying to find a way into bed with Angie? Like that would ever happen, I breathed, then snorted a laugh as I let go of Eric. Damn dude, Brandon continued, trying to break the tension. You said you didn't do that for your ex-wife. Why Angie? My ex was a 304 who screwed just about anybody. I never found out exactly who, I seethed. With any luck, she gave them AIDS before we divorced. If I ever find out for sure, I'll make certain I show them my appreciation. I looked over at Rob and Marcus. Rob looked like he was about to run, but Marcus grinned back at me. I doubted even being in the best shape of my life I could take him, but at the time, I would have tried. Neither one said anything. I'll be in Angie's office until she gets back or the cops arrive. Damn, I sure messed up my immediate future. I chided myself as I walked away. It was for a friend. But did I need to throw my job away? Sitting in Angie's office, I had plenty of time to think. I came to the realization that I hadn't done this for Angie or Erica. I'd done this for me. I couldn't have looked myself in the mirror if I hadn't done something. Granted, hitting him and then threatening him was a bit extreme. But a little less than an hour later, I heard Angie open her office door. She walked quietly over to her desk and sat down. She stared at me for a moment, then sighed. Seems I go out to run an errand and I miss all the excitement, she said, deadpanned. I was met at the door by several women who simply had to let me know what happened. I'm sorry, Angie. I lost it there for a moment. I don't want to cause you to lose your gym, so I'll pack up my stuff and leave. That way, if Eric tries to make trouble for you, you can state legally you kicked me out. That should help cover you. Okay, she said softly, staring at me oddly as if studying me for some reason. It seems unnecessary but probably wise, just in case. Tommy boy, I can't see Eric pressing any charges. She saw my confusion. First off, she continued, his pride won't let him. It would be a public record that someone kicked his butt. At least this way he can say you sucker punched him and try to save face. Besides, he's already trying to get me to sell the gym back to him. It would look bad for his macho image if this got legally messy. Yes, he's offered me a very good price for the gym. Seems Sugar, which either gave him a lot of money to leave, or he's pawned all the gifts she'd given him. Either way, it looks like he has enough to buy me out and let me start again. He believes his bad boy image will draw in a lot of women, and a lot of womanizers will follow. He may be right. I don't know. Are you thinking about selling a mess fit? Yes, very seriously. I think I am going to take the advice of a very good friend and pursue my original dream of being a physical therapist. Well, you need to do what's best for you in Goldilocks, I said, fighting back the disappointment of realizing Angie and Erica might soon be leaving Brownwood. Well, it wouldn't happen until this summer, she said softly. And then what? Will you and Erica start over somewhere else? No. With the money from selling the gym, I can go to school full-time for a while. It looks as if I could pass my state physical therapy assistant certification by the end of July and earn my bachelor's degree at St. Catherine's by next spring. Bree is certain I can get on at Sacred Heart as a PDA and work there until I complete my DPT at St. Catherine's. That means Erica and I would stay in Brownwood for at least 4 more years, she said, smiling warmly, noticing my obvious relief. I am glad. I'd miss you both more than I care to imagine. Now, I better go clean out my locker. I stood up quickly and left silently. It only took me a couple minutes to clean out my locker. As I came out of the men's locker room, I noticed Angie standing there with a good dozen or more people standing behind her. I guess they were expecting a show of her kicking me out or something. What they got was an or something. I froze as I stood in front of her. She had her hands on her hips and was peering at me. She'd an odd look on her face, a combination fear and excitement. Tommy boy, you need to go put those back in your locker. I know I can act like a witch sometimes, but you were defending me and I am not going to kick you out for that. Besides, I told you I was taking a good friend's advice. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around my neck. The kiss she laid on me was reminiscent of our night together. I dropped my duffel bag and wrapped my arms tightly around her. It wasn't until we heard a few whistles and catcalls that we broke our kiss. As I stared down into her baby blue eyes, I knew I could forever lose myself in them. Mrs. Harper told me I needed to pull my head out of my shit and admit what I really felt, she said, staring me in the face. Tommy boy, I love you, and a hell of a lot more than just as a friend. Angie's kiss and declaration of her feelings for me started the rumor mill working overtime. I received countless congratulations from guys at the gym I'd never met. How was I supposed to respond to that? I questioned myself frequently. Thanks, like I'd somehow done something to earn her love? I struggled to fully accept my good fortune. It helped when people around the gym began to good-naturedly start referring to us as Beauty and the Beast. When Angie asked me if I was okay with it, we came to a quick understanding. Baby, are you sure it doesn't bother you? I smiled and took her in my arms. Angie, I said calmly, I've never thought of myself as a pretty boy, but I am surprised so many people have seen you when you've had pumice. A hole, she laughed. T. She elbowed me in the ribs, then stared into my eyes and shook her head slowly. You don't get to call me that anymore, she whispered, while peering into my soul, at least not where you're concerned. I pulled her close and kissed her passionately until I felt her softly sigh. Okay, Angel, I whispered. But I happen to know my beauty loves to tease her man. I also know he loves it too. Well, she said, grinning evilly, Erica may need to go over to Mrs. Harper's tonight. You think the beast might be able to come out and play? Oh, I definitely think it can be arranged. I found out quite a bit about my beauty over the next few months. The most surprising was that even with all her teasing, Angie was very conservative in the bedroom. And they lived happily ever after. The end. Yeah, right. You would think after the ogre got the princess the movie would end. But life isn't like that, now is it? Unfortunately, there's the reality even the best fantasy can't hide. There's life after the happily ever after. The fact is, being in love with a beautiful woman for an average guy is both ego-boosting and ego-shaking at the same time. There's no way to describe the feeling of having a beautiful woman on your arm. It'll make even the most timid mouse of a man into a roaring lion. On the flip side is the ever-present knowledge she could upgrade anytime she wanted. That knowledge is like a poison, constantly eating away at a man's ego. Hopefully, his beautiful lover never gives him reason to be jealous. But what if she's a bit of an exhibitionist? Yeah, my insecurities were working overtime. It wasn't long before it became evident we had trust issues. Angie and I had to fight to get through those initial obstacles. There were some very ugly conversations, which tended to spring up at the worst times. Once, while we were out on a date, I noticed Angie was drawing even more attention than normal. She was wearing a form-fitting blouse. If that wasn't enough, she paired it with a short skirt. It was an outfit she liked to wear that tended to stop traffic. But that night, the sharks were swimming even closer. When I mentioned it to her, she grinned. Well, I do like how this outfit draws attention, she said sweetly. I suspect it's the fact I am not wearing anything below that might have something to do with it as well. I almost spit out my drink as she batted her eyes innocently at me. I'd like to say it was the beginning of an incredible, sexy night, but it didn't turn out that way. Angie never overtly flashed anyone. While she was having a wonderful time, I was fighting off my demons. Usually, I was fine with her little ventures into exhibition, but that particular night I was especially insecure. Sure, I was incredibly excited, but so were the sharks around us. Most of her admirers couldn't take their eyes off her. Those that could, kept trying to position themselves to get another pose of her. Slowly, my irritation became more than I could hide. Angie noticed it immediately, and at first found it amusing, but soon, it turned to annoyance and our evening deteriorated into an Arctic wasteland. Each time some guy came too close, it was like another needle under my skin. We ended up cutting the night short. Angie waited a whole block before she jumped all over me. Damn it, Tommy boy. What the hell is wrong with you? Nothing, I snapped back, both of us knowing it wasn't true. Bullshit. Now tell me why you moping around like some little boy who's had his toy taken away from him. I don't know, I growled. Seems like you were offering what I thought was mine to almost everyone in there. I watched her anger begin to build as she sat in stunned silence. Screw you, she finally yelled, with tears starting to well up in her eyes. She sat back and stared out the front windshield, making sure not to look at me. I shot quick glimpses over at her as I drove. I could see a tear starting to run down her cheek, and my heart and mind raged as they battled each other. You a-hole, she said, her voice choked with emotion. I've never given you a reason to think I'd cheat on you. No, I said flatly. But damn it, Angie, we've just started dating exclusively. Some days it's hard enough to believe you're with me. I know I don't deserve you, but damn it, I don't need to be reminded you can have any guy you want. Tommy boy, you need to grow up and get over this insecurity bullshit, she barked. I am with you because I want to be with you. You need to man up and stop acting like a child. I turned and glared at her. I felt the rage start to overwhelm me. So let me get this right. I see that. You have a bad day, you feel down, or you're unsure or even scared. You run to me and I am supposed to provide a safe place and give you comfort. Now if I have a bad day, or I am insecure or confused, I get grow up, or be a man and get over it. Am I hearing this right? So those times you were over at my apartment angry, hurt and afraid because your a-hole ex-husband was back in town, I should have told you to grow the hell up and act like an adult? Instead of holding you, I should have simply told you to get a backbone and just do it? Is this what I am expected to live with? My penance for dating a hot girl? I sure as hell better be there for her if she falls. But tough shit. I am on my own if I am the one who fails? Is that what I have to look forward to if we continue to stay together? How much worse will it be if we actually stay together long term? Shit, if that's the case, I need some time away from all this. I need to reevaluate if this is worth it or not. Angie stared at me silently. I could read anger, then shock, then something else in her face. We drove the rest of the way to her house in silence. When we got there, I pulled into the driveway, but made no effort to get out and get her door. As she slowly got out, she turned and looked at me. "Tommy boy," she started softly. "Please, Angie," I interrupted. "I need some time to think. I'll call you in a few days." I drove off, leaving her with her jaw hanging. I wasn't back in my apartment for more than 10 minutes before there was a knock at my door. I was tempted not to answer it, but knew it was immature on my part. When I opened the door, I was shocked to see a face which exuded such incredible pain that I instinctively reached out for her. She embraced me as if she was clinging to a life preserver. "Don't, Tommy boy," she whispered. "Don't shut me out, not for days. Tell me what your heart needs to say. I may not want to hear it, but I am a big girl. I'll deal with it. Just, please, baby," she said softly, as tears started to slip down her cheeks. "Please don't give up on us. Don't give up on me. I am so sorry, Tommy boy." "I am too," I whispered back to her. She leaned back and took my face in both of her hands. Peering into my face, she spoke softly. "Tommy boy, you were right. I was leaning so heavily on your strength and your security, I failed to be safe for you when you needed it. What's worse is when you needed reassured. I acted like a cold-hearted witch. I am sorry. You didn't deserve that. Please understand. This isn't an excuse, but it is how I've been treating the world since Eric left us. It's my defense and my way of protecting Erica and me. Please, baby, please understand this is new to me. I am not good at this." "What? Apologizing?" I said softly. She snorted and stared back into my eyes. I could feel the overwhelming emotions pouring out of her as they wrapped caringly around me. "Well, that too," she smirked, "but I meant us. It's been over 3 years since I tried to have a real relationship with a man. It's been even longer since I've had a good relationship with one. Tommy boy, there are a few things you need to come grips with if we're going to have any type of a relationship. The first is I am not Leah. I'll never cheat on you. I did that to someone I cared about a long time ago, and will never do it again. We'll end whatever relationship we have before I'd ever do that again. I know you still hurt. So do I. But if you give us a chance, you'll see that you can trust me. Secondly, you need to realize I am going to let you down sometimes. It won't be intentional, but I am going to screw up. I need you to love me enough to forgive me when I do. If you can't, then I am afraid we're doomed as a couple. I promise you I'll love you enough to forgive you when fail me, and I know you will. It might take me a while to work through my anger and disappointment, but I'll get there. I'll be able to do it because I know you wouldn't intentionally hurt me. Last, I know this seems harsh, but you need to pull your head out of your shit and accept facts. Yes, I can easily go out and find some guy to sleep with. It also wouldn't take much to find some guy who'll swear he'll love me forever. Tommy, I choose to be with you. It's your arms I want to hold me. It's your voice I want to hear during the good times and the bad. I think we could have something real here. You seem to think you're not worthy of me, but that's just bullshit. You're a good-looking guy who's even more handsome inside. You've no idea how lucky I know I am to have you. Tommy, I found in you something I thought I'd lost forever. My dreams. Baby, if we keep going the way we are, we could have something I dreamed of as a little girl. I know there are no guarantees, but just the possibility that it could actually happen is what I felt I'd lost. I know sometimes my teasing bothers you. The longer we're together, the more you'll learn to trust me. Until then, I'll try to stop. No, I interrupted. That's unfair to you, and besides, it doesn't always bother me. It's just some days I get so down. I realize that, and I am trying not to be so insecure. She smiled up at me and then kissed me. We'll have to do this together, baby. I need to be more observant of where your head is at when I tease, and you need to work on becoming less jealous. We'll both need to work on making you less insecure. I couldn't help but grin. Angie groaned and rolled her eyes. Sex doesn't fix everything. She laughed as she molded herself into me. Maybe, Angel, I whispered in her ear, but it doesn't hurt either. It didn't. We worked together to begin overcoming my insecurities to the point where I'd be okay with Angie's exhibitionism. There were a lot of boundaries. Yeah, many were the same boundaries Leah had walked over years earlier without a care. The turning point for me was when I finally decided to trust Angie the best I could. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but Angie wasn't Leah. She'd already showed me she'd fight for this relationship, so I had to try. For Angie's part, there were more than a few trust issues she had to deal with as well. The first were those that came from not one, but 2 broken marriages. Then there was the trust issues almost every rich or beautiful person has. Is that special someone in love with them, or their looks, or money? It's the nature of the beast. All those gold diggers trying to marry into a comfortable life, and those horn dogs simply trying to get some beautiful woman into bed. It made sense. It didn't make it any easier to work through it, though. It was the months of fighting side by side that wove us even tighter as a couple. The three of us were quickly becoming inseparable. As the end of spring neared, I could tell Angie was getting nervous about selling the gym. She was also trying to approach me with an idea. She barked out a laugh, threw her arms around me, and gave me a smoldering kiss. Breaking it off, she smiled warmly up into my eyes. As I said, we were successfully working on alleviating each other's fears and insecurities. The fact we were falling deeper for each other was a serious bonus. A month later, she sold the gym. It was a bittersweet day. I knew I probably wouldn't be back as long as Eric owned the gym, so it really was goodbye for some of our friends there. Brandon, of course, had some smart-ass comments, but I was going miss seeing him anyway. Tara had graduated, but was hanging around Brownwood. It seemed her relationship with Jeremy was serious enough that they were starting to talk about future plans. I really was thrilled for her. When Angie sold MS Fit, she took a lower offer from Eric. It was with the unofficial agreement he signed away any parental rights to Erica. Angie said he signed without any hesitation. I wasn't sure what I thought of all that, but then Angie told me she wanted him completely out of their lives. She hinted someday Erica would have a new daddy, and that daddy would be Erica's in every way. I was still dealing with those implications when Angie had her breast reduction surgery 3 weeks after the sale. She said she didn't want or need them anymore. She also said they only reminded her of a past that was behind her. I didn't think it was possible, but she looked even more beautiful. It took a while to get me over my newly flared-up insecurities which came with Angie's new look. Eventually, our relationship got to a point where I went back to Dallas with her and Erica at the end of summer. We ended up at a family cookout in August. When I met the family, they weren't the monsters I'd expected. Most were a down-to-earth people who loved her, but hadn't agreed with her decisions. Her father had liked Jimmy, but wasn't in favor of the marriage. He certainly wasn't in favor of her stripping and absolutely hated Eric. He hadn't been shy about his feelings. Although he still loved his daughter, his disappointment was still very evident. There were some relatives who looked down their noses at Angie. Some did because of their religious beliefs, and a few because they were still really close to Jimmy. Those individuals tended to have lots of snide little comments concerning Angie's past. I did well at the beginning, making sure to stay close to Angie, but I soon found myself separated from her, talking to a small group of her relatives. Angie's mother was quietly listening as one of Angie's aunts, Rebecca, was leading the inquisition. She was pumping me about my past and family. It didn't bother me, since Aunt Rebecca seemed to be on Angie's side. When Aunt Rebecca mentioned I might hear some unflattering things about Angie's past, I guess my response wasn't subtle. Okay, it was probably more like a bull in a china shop. Well, I said loudly, I can't believe anyone would knowingly talk shit about a woman in front of the man who loves her. Nobody's that damn stupid. An eerie silence fell over all those in earshot. Angie's mother's eyes grew huge, and Aunt Rebecca began laughing. It didn't take long before my reply had spread throughout the entire party. I wasn't sure if I'd made a mistake by making such an aggressive statement when I felt someone come sit very closely beside me. I looked over and saw Angie as she peered out into the crowd. "So you love me, huh?" she said, fighting a smile. "Well, duh," I snorted. "Hell, Angel. I'd yell it out every time we go out in public if I knew it wouldn't embarrass you." She looked at me and grinned. "Yeah, that could get embarrassing really quick," she said, grinning. "Of course, now I've got people asking me when we're getting married. Not if we're getting married, but when we're getting married." "If I knew your answer," I said softly. "I was going to ask during the halftime of a Crusader football game this fall." Her head snapped around, and she stared at me with her hand over her mouth. I looked sheepishly over at her and saw the tears in her eyes. "Really?" she whispered. "Yeah, but I'd need to be really sure about your answer before asking so publicly. Getting turned down in front of tens of thousands of people. I am not sure my ego could take that." She silently stared at me. I couldn't tell if she was terrified or thrilled with my declaration. I turned back and looked absently out at the crowd of Angie's relatives. "No guts, huh?" I heard her respond softly. "Well, I could ask you here in front of all your family and friends, but I am afraid your answer might cause more tension between you and your family." "I wouldn't do that to you." "What? You mean if I turned you down?" "Yeah, but it could go bad if you accept it as well. I don't think after my little public announcement I am all that well thought of by some your family." "Like I give a shit," she spat softly. I turned and looked at her. I saw her mind running a million miles a minute, trying to get a handle on this conversation. "You do, Angel," I said gently. "You do." I turned back to the party and slowly reached over and pulled her closer to my side. I felt her soft hair as she put her head on my shoulder. We sat with my arm around her waist and her leaning into me for several silent minutes. Finally, she broke the silence. "I don't suppose you even have a ring yet." "No," I chuckled. "I was intimidated by that giant rock you carry around with you in your purse. What can I say? Size envy." She laughed and buried her face into my chest. I heard her sigh as she began to snuggle into me. "So," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking, "your answer would be yes?" She sat back and looked up at me. Then she smiled warmly. "Well, you'll never know unless you ask me." She turned and pressed herself close so she could reach my ear. I felt her warm breath and then her hot lips as they kissed me gently. Then I felt the tip of her tongue as she slowly drew it around my earlobe. When she had my undivided attention, she whispered into my ear, "Chicken shit." We broke out laughing and I pulled her into my arms. Our lips fought to devour each other for a brief moment before I leaned back. "I need to do something," I said, grinning. "You're damn right you do," she hissed. "I can think of more than a few things you need to do to me, and soon." I got up and quickly left a laughing blonde still sitting there. I made my way through the crowd until I spotted my target. He had a puzzled look on his face when I came up to him. "Sir," I said, and saw the recognition dawning in his eyes. "I'd like to ask your permission to marry your daughter. You know you don't need it. It didn't matter the last 2 times." "Yes, sir, I do understand, but you're wrong. It does matter. It matters to her, and I think it matters to you, too. So if I say I don't approve, you won't ask her?" "No, she's an adult and no longer living under your roof, so I'll ask her anyway, but your approval would mean a great deal to her, and since it's important to her, it's important to me." He stared at me as if he was sizing me up. I hoped he'd see this as a way back to a better relationship with his daughter, but I didn't know him well enough to be certain of his response. "Well, you got her to go back to school." "Actually, sir," I said, grinning, "these were her choices. If she hadn't already wanted to do those things, I doubt I could have convinced her." "Yeah," he said, smiling. "She can be a bit headstrong, but I gotta figure you'd something to do with it." "Well, maybe a little," I conceded. "Well, if it means anything, you've got my approval." "Thank you, sir. Just one thing, though. You take care of my baby girl. If you hurt her like that last hole did, I'll hunt you down." "You don't have to worry, sir. I could never do that to her or Erica. I'll protect them with my life." "Hell's son," he snorted. "I don't doubt that for a moment." As I walked back over to Angie, I noticed a small crowd had gathered around her. Her mother and Aunt Rebecca stood beside her as she held Erica. Angie's mother had tears in her eyes while her aunt was softly laughing at the obviously surprised and somewhat terrified look on Angie's face. Stepping in front of her, I took Erica from her and put her on the ground beside me. Kneeling down, I took Erica's hand in my left and with my right. I gently took Angie's hand. "Angie," I said with more confidence than I actually felt, "I've loved you from the first time you told me to get off my fat butt and give you 5 more reps." "Mommy," Erica gasped. "Tommy Bear said but?" I heard a smattering of laughs behind me, and I realized the crowd was growing. Undaunted, I continued, "It was easy to fall in love with you since you're so beautiful, but the more I got to know you, the more I realized that you're so much more than just your looks. You are the most incredible woman I've ever met and are more stunning inside than outside. I've asked and received your father's permission to ask for your hand in marriage." Angie, her mother, and her aunt all looked over at Angie's father in surprise. "Well, I'll be damned," Aunt Rebecca whispered. I glanced back at him briefly and saw a satisfied smirk on his face. Looking back at Angie, I cleared my throat. "Angie, I would be honored if you would consent to be my wife and allow me to become Erica's daddy." "Tommy Bear," chirped the blonde munchkin beside me. "I already got a daddy." "You're right, sweetheart," I said, looking into her innocent blue eyes. "But maybe I could be daddy too?" "You're silly." She giggled, then thought, "You can be Papa Bear." "Well, Mama Bear?" I said, turning and looking back up at Angie. "You said I'd have to ask to find out your answer. I'm asking, will you marry me?" Angie dropped to her knees in front of me and gave me a huge kiss. I could hear some of the cheers and applause as we came up for air. "So was that a yes?" I said, grinning. "What do you think?" She laughed. "I am not taking a chance. I need to hear it." "Yes, Tom Swanson. Yes, I'll marry you." The rest of our time in Dallas was a blur. The only thing I remember was the constant looks of satisfaction Angie kept giving me. As we left for the airport, Angie's father gave her and Erica a huge hug. I could see the tears running down Angie's face as she hugged him back. "Thank you," said a soft voice beside me. I turned and saw Angie's mom standing there with Aunt Rebecca. Her mother was a sweet, but very soft-spoken woman. Aunt Rebecca obviously wasn't. "They needed that badly," Angie's mother continued. "They can both be so damn bullheaded sometimes." "Damn, sis." Angie's aunt laughed. "Such language." Both women chuckled and kissed me on the cheek. Both whispered their welcome to the family as they hugged me goodbye. When we got back to Brownwood, I replaced Angie's fake rock on her finger with real one. It was only a carat, but was pretty damn gaudy and very visible. Angie adored it. She told me it was big enough to keep her happy and satisfied. It was also large enough to keep the wolves at bay. Then she told me the ring was damn impressive as well. We got married in December in small private ceremony in the St. Catherine's Chapel. Since we'd both been through it before, it was primarily just family and a few friends. What we saved on the wedding we spent on a 2-week honeymoon in Hawaii. I was surprised to find out Angie had been right. My jealousy had greatly reduced with the knowledge that she'd chosen me as her husband. That realization, and having her constantly remind me others could look, but only I would ever be allowed to touch, slowly made me secure enough for her to play freely with that facet of her personality. December 2016 Brownwood. That reflection of Angie, Erica, and myself 2.5 years ago during the 4th of July ended up being prophetic. This last year has seen us meld into a normal suburban family. I got promoted again, this time to senior network administrator. That basically meant handling the major accounts and delegating most nights and weekends to others. It works out better since Angie got her certification and is now a physical therapist assistant at Sacred Heart. She graduated and entered St. Catherine's DPT program right on schedule. With our newfound income, we've recently bought a 2-story, 5-bedroom, and 3-bathroom home. It's up in the Twin Oaks area, about 5 blocks away from Angie's first house. It's not the country club, but it is damn nice. We turned one of the bedrooms into our own private little gym. I am proud to report we christened every piece of workout equipment in there. Twice. I still see Leah and Susie around Brownwood on occasion. Last I heard, Leah was still dating Theo. It's supposedly an on-again, off-again type of thing. I also heard she decided to lose some weight and joined a mess fit. I once mistakenly wondered if Eric ever hit on her, or if they ever got together. I am still trying to purge that mental image. Susie married Bryce Hawthorne and became the trophy wife I guess she wanted to be. Angie heard she brought a few STDs home to him. I can't say I am sorry, since it couldn't have happened to a nicer witch. Whatever actually happened, though, didn't seem to change their lifestyles. There are still rumors he pimps her out to his close friends and business associates. Maybe that's the life Susie always wanted, or maybe not. I won't say the thought of Susie being trapped in her own private little hell doesn't make me smile, but I don't lose sleep thinking about her or Leah. Hell, to each their own, and I've got my hands full with 2 beautiful blondes. Right now, they're waiting on me to take them to the Christmas ball. Both my wife and daughter look incredible in their sapphire dresses. Yes, she's my daughter. Damn right, I adopted her, in a heartbeat. Hopefully, there won't be too many guys swarming our table this year. Erica's a beauty, but only 6, and Angie has her rock, her child, her husband, and a noticeable baby bump. Erica has already named her future brother or sister, Baby Bear, to complete the fairy tale. Tonight looks like it's going to be somewhat uncomfortable. I thought Angie looked sexy as hell with a baby bump and was having a hard time keeping my hands off her while she was finishing up with her makeup. Life goes on. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.